Welcome to Humanity at the Threshold. Is it transformation, guidance, or extinction? Here today we dive deeply into consciousness, humanity, the mysteries of this time, this unprecedented time. And today we have some of the greatest thought leaders possible, and they're with us, and they're going to be exploring the powerful question: is humanity entering a new world? Are we being guided by Pleiadians? Is there going to be an extraterrestrial rescue? Or have we been projecting our collective fears and hopes? And could we possibly be facing an extinction event? Rather than debate today, it's going to be a lovely gathering of some of the most profound perspectives, different ways of seeing this moment in history, to spark curiosity, to reflect, and to maybe even change a sense of direction. I'm your co-host, Nori.
And I am Augie.
And we invite you to take a breath with us, open your heart, join us in this deep, vast conversation, this communication, this community, this sharing that just might change the way that we see our future.
Hello, friends. I have been pondering this question for quite a while. What in the world is going on right now? Like Nora said, some are saying there's a new world coming. Others say it's an alien rescue mission. Some thinks maybe it's a mind-projected illusion that we are living in. And many think, yeah, it could be an extinction event, because we have had 5 of those before. So, well, let's not decide for everybody. Let's get some opinions from others based on facts and science. Let me say something about the speakers first. We're starting out with Dan Willis. He is actually working with a Pleiadian scientist. And this scientist is giving him technologies, and it is working. This is the absolute best of crystal technology that is being given to us. And then we have the next speaker is Frank Jacob. You may know him from, he was the one broke the story on the looking glass, where they were able to see what's going on in the future. The next speaker is Geraldine Orozco. She is probably one of the deepest thinkers I can possibly think on. And she speaks on the energies that is going on right now and where that would lead us. The next speaker is LeBain, tremendous researcher. She gave us insight of what's going on, and to be after the government lies are coming to the surface, and they admit that, yes, we've been lying to you for 90 years, but it was for your good. Let's find out what she expects to happen. The last speaker, but not the least, it is Father Francis Tiso. He went to Tibet and to India to confirm the rumor that there actually is people ascending. And he found the evidence. He went to a monastery where he found the evidence, and he's talking about it. People are actually taking their physical bodies with them and leaving to the higher vibrations. This is going to get interesting. So stay with us here. This is going to be more than excitement. It's going to be an education for everybody. So let's open it up. We bring you first, Dan Willis. So welcome here.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to have some fun tonight and a phenomenal education session this is going to be because we have Dan Willis. And Dan Willis is well known. He is on some of the more prominent shows out there, and he's done a lot of things. I want to say a few things about him. He is returning to broadcast Team Alpha on this roundtable conference, and this is going to be good. Dan is an incredible researcher, and he's a good friend. And we have some phenomenal scientific discussions on the phone sometimes. And
Hmm.
it's mostly him talking, me listen deal, but it is so good. It all, for an outsider might sound like a 27th grade education level because it is so good. And Dan has been on both sides of the veil of classified information. In fact, he was on the Disclosure Project's top secret military witness that testified at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2001 in front of every major news media, well, at least in the US and some of them from overseas. And all of this was about the UFOs and the extraterrestrial presence. He was also a radio broadcast engineer and an ABC newsman. So he is he's got a good understanding of fake news. I just had to say that. Anyway, and today we will be talking about something that he's been working on lately. He is in contact with a scientist and another individual from the Pleiades, and they have been showing down how to create scientific apparatuses, I should call it, instead of instruments, and they are working. Some of it is crystal technology, and folks, you got to listen to this because we're also going to talk about what the Pleiades is talking, but that they're telling us about where we are going, what will happen, and just sit back and listen because this is going to get good. Welcome here to the roundtable, Dan.
Welcome, Dan Willis. Thank you for being with us.
Naki or Nori.
That's a
Hey, it's great to join you guys again.
good to
Yeah,
see.
there's always something new to learn, isn't there?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, this is such an incredible topic, and I'm so excited to draw from all of the perspectives that we'll be drawing from. But
Mhm.
how do you personally define this moment for humanity, Dan? I mean, is it a crisis? Is it awakening? Is it something else?
Oh, it's historic. It's an amazing time, when you consider that if not the history you were taught in school, but the true history of, extraterrestrial interaction going all the way back to biblical times. And in the last few centuries, especially the beginning of the 20th century, how our population has been under, I guess you could call it psychological warfare, where our perceptions have been manipulated to hide the extraterrestrial presence and the full story of humanity. Now we're after decades of ah, decades of manipulation of our perceptions, we are now just starting to see it's starting to come out in the mainstream media. It's all over the place, and it's kind of preparing the population eventually for contact. And it's very exciting, when you understand that, it's a mix out there, just like on planet Earth. There's some nasty guys out there, and the majority of them are benevolent. Fortunately, just a few years ago, all the nasties were removed from our solar system. There is such a thing as the Galactic Federation of Worlds, who is basically a membership of thousands of races across our galaxy. And they have extremely advanced technologies that could change everything on our planet, from transportation to power generation to medical, and as soon as as soon as things get cleaned up here, I guess a little bit on Earth, so that we need to be a unified planet. They don't want to bring a civilization who's fighting amongst themselves. We need to be a unified civilization on this planet in order to join the Federation. And as soon as we are able to do that, then we're able to benefit from all the technologies of the world. I've been in a discussion with a Palladian scientist who's currently operating on the planet Mars. And it sounds pretty crazy, I hear myself talking, like decades ago, is like, yeah, they believe this stuff. But you have to understand that the sequence of events that happened that led up to this. But
Yes.
they can see the timeline of the future, and the future looks great. It's between there and now, where there's a fluctuating time path, where there's an infinite number of ways to get there. But eventually, when we get there, it's going to be beautiful. It's wonderful. So that's what they've shared with me, and they can see into the future, and see that world that we're moving into.
So is it a rescue, or is there another role, for lack of a better word, that we are unaware of? Because you've got the inside scoop.
I wouldn't call it a rescue. I would call it, we have, uh, there is, different classification scales of civilization. When a civilization has reached interstellar capability and has made contact with extraterrestrial races, they're considered a stage 3 civilization. Most of the people on this planet still think we're at stage 2. We're using rockets to go into space, and gasoline and nuclear, and we're using pharmaceuticals instead of holographic medical technologies. Um, the thing is that the the world that we're about to enter into has to do with us growing up as a civilization and taking responsibility for ourselves and for our own world. And nobody's here to rescue us or save us, but when we can become awake and aware of the reality that's been hidden and take responsibility, that's the kind of civilization they want to bring into, their Galactic Federation. It's really an amazing situation where you have these baddies out there in the universe, and when they want to come in and take over a world or something like that. Um, the Federation is all these members that will join together and counter and protect that world. So it's a very benevolent thing. And when you look at what Star Trek was actually fed into the Office of Naval Intelligence, into Gene Roddenberry, the Prime Directive is actually a real thing. And it's a very benevolent document that is of non-interference and always respecting the natural laws of evolution of the universe and respecting free will.
So maybe what I'm thinking, what you said, is that it's kind of like a parent maybe trying to guide a child to a better direction, but not necessarily taking their free will, but says, yeah, go out and just fall down and scrape yourself, and then you know what that feels like.
That's a
But
perfect
this is,
analogy.
yeah.
That's an absolute perfect analogy. Um, you know how I got involved in this was beside my military experience of knowing that extraterrestrials are coming out of their ocean and secret reports
Yeah.
that led me to questioning this, to go to Washington to testify regarding it. Um, in 1977, I had this ET interaction with a being that was actually part of one of three races, the Emether, the Selosi, and the Umites are part of a science transfer program to our planet. And I interacted with an Emether who gave me kind of a kind of a quick lesson on the geometry of the universe and relationship with consciousness and in the
So
early night
the download then.
kind of, yeah, kind of like a download. It was a very visual with geometrics. Here I can have a little slide here. I can kind of share
That would be
what
lovely.
that what that looked like. Um, let's see. I guess leading me. Oh, there we go. It's being it wasn't a gray, but it has gray genetics. But he had more of a human-looking face. They're very benevolent beings, unlike the grays. It projected a sphere relating the geometry of consciousness, and so it led me to try to understand this. My dear friend Elena Danan, who you've had on your show, she was abducted by the Greys. They put a tracking implant. She was rescued. They had to repurpose it to be a quantum communication device, and she actually saw the database of the Galactic Federation worlds and detailed 110 different extraterrestrial species. This is from her book, The Gift of the Stars. This is what Emether looks like. Um, in my communications with her, uh, the contact that she has, Thor Hanaredian, his younger brother is going to a university in the Pleiades, learning to be a terraformer or what they call a star maker. And so we could have a communication with him to understand more about the science. And so apparently, they kind of brought me into the science transfer program, and the Emether way back then prepared me uh, to be able to share this science in the future. This led me to work with Dr. Marcel Vogel in the 80s, and Dr. Marcel Vogel had this vision of cutting a crystal in a dipyramidal form. Delivered a lot of crystals from the crystal mines and over in Arkansas. He started experimenting. He would have loved to have known what I know now,
Mm.
that how the crystals are formed. And so in 2022, Elaine invited me on her show. Thorhan's younger brother, who is now graduated from the university and is doing terraforming operations on the planet Mars. They're preparing Mars right now for the Terran colonies to arrive in the next 2 years. So they know we're going to be on Mars within the next 2 years. And there's even Terran engineers there as well. Um, and so, you
Wow.
know,
Oh,
uh, yeah, anyway, he revealed I was a scientist in Atlantis.
Yes.
And then it goes into a long thing of what we've learned from him, which is the science of the universe. I've been communicating for over 3.5 years now with him. The communication log is 260 pages of question, answer, question, answer. I had to put together a science team to help me, each one in Switzerland, one in Paris, one in the US that are very specialized in what they know to help work with me, to help bring these technologies for the benefit of humanity into realization. And there's some very exciting results. So I've
Yeah,
learned
that's phenomenal.
about the structure of the universe, and so that goes into quite a deep
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. I wonder though, in your communications, how do you communicate? Is it telepathic, visual, or you
Oh,
communicate through someone else?
the implant that is within Elena, how they work is what she sees and hears and experiences, they can see. It goes through the optic nerve, so they can see and hear, and vice versa. So it's very advanced, and it's quantum, which means the person can be on another galaxy. You can communicate, unlike,
Yeah.
you know, the technology that we have. And so what I do is I write up the question and they scan it, they see it, interact, and then she writes the answer back and sends it back to me. So it's kind of like my galactic pen pal.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Well, regarding the conversation and theories about us experiencing a projection of collective consciousness, um, what's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, all of us are interconnected. One of the things that he's shared with me is that each one of us, our bodies are made up of our planet, Terra, and that we uh, everything is interconnected. So nobody's an individual in all of this because we
Right.
all do collectively affect the whole, and that our DNA is resonant with this planet. Like he is sharing that, when he's on his brother's ship, his DNA is from the planet Era in the Pleiades. And so he has that resonance always connected with his planet because his body is made up of the resonance of the elements of that planet. And the same goes for us. It's like we're always interconnected with, and the planet is a conscious, as you know, a living being, and the our hearts are like these quantum magnetic gravity generators that the pulse of our heart is actually uh, interconnected with the planet, and the planet is connected to our star. And our star is connected to the central galaxy of our system. And the central galaxy of our system is connected to the central uh, center of our universe. And the center of our universe is then connected to the singularity that is what they call creator source. And people call it God. And then it's like this, it, it, it it's like all connected as one. There's no separation, and the creator source actually oscillates through different densities. In our universe, there is a infinite number of these dimensional spheres or bubbles, if you wish.
Mhm.
We're in one of these bubbles, and that creator source basically emanates from the center of this bubble. And all these bubbles are formed in like this framework that's similar to what you see as the flower of life pattern. But these bubbles go into infinity. And outside of these bubbles is called the void, which is devoid of time and space. and that each of these bubbles is different. They're all different because the void is in nonlinear space, and so you have all these variations. Just like in nature, you have variations of the golden mean ratio, not exact, but kind of different and different. If you go to a different universe, beings will grow differently, and it's all different. Our particular universe bubble, it has 12 densities, which are like octaves. And I've learned the frequency and the geometry of these densities through him. They're basically cubo-octahedron geometry based on the tetrahedral matrix of the holographic matrix of the universe. And we've learned what the frequencies are of each density. And we're attempting to use these frequencies to uh, make water beneficial, Anyway, it gets into a long, I'm like in kindergarten here, with what they know and learning and working with these scientists that make this so we can provide scientific verified evidence. It's one thing, anybody can say anything, right?
Yes.
But when you can scientifically verify and other people can reproduce it based on this information that has not been heard before, it gives credibility to the information that we're receiving. So that's my current focus is on science and bringing about scientific validation of this technology.
Yeah. I remember a conversation we had, oh gosh, that could be a year ago now, about you were, Yen Han told you how to put together a crystal, wired crystal that Elena Danaan used to communicate with somebody in Japan, I thought, and she heard some
Yeah.
music. They were
It's the reality transflux modulator.
yeah.
Basically, it gets into a long discussion, but when a crystal is cut properly in alignment with the natural lattice structure, and the terminations are set at the correct angles, what happens is double coiled torsion field exists within the crystal, which forms this phase conjunction node, which is what they call the eye of the crystal, like the eye of a hurricane, you could say. And so when you piezoelectrically stimulate the crystal using silver electrodes, it opens up this vortex eye, which is the singularity, which allows you to connect to any place in time and space, any dimension, any universe. And so, yeah, we had an interesting thing happening with John Charles, who was in Canada, and he was thinking, "Oh, this great Japanese music. Elena would love it." And Elena's feeding her cats in Ireland, and she happened to leave her transflux modulator operating, and all of a sudden Japanese music is playing through it.
Unbelievable.
Um, so, this is kind of a funny, interesting thing. But yeah, they use crystals for everything on their planet. They power their entire planet. They have crystals in this large pyramid that they have torsion fields of silver and copper coils that open up the frill that is transponded to all their devices to power everything, and then their spaceships. They collect the frill into the crystals in the central core of the spaceship that transfers the energy into these red mercury plasma toroid coils that are in perpendicular configuration that cancels mass and allows them to transverse the galaxy with their ships. Anyway, it
Yeah.
goes into so much stuff.
Yeah, when you talk about big crystals like that, people might think, yeah, crystals aren't that big. Yes, they are. Remember that cave in Mexico when some of the crystals are 20 feet long? We have
Oh,
pictures
yeah.
of people walking around in that cave, and the people were really small compared to the huge crystals. You've seen that picture, I'm sure.
Oh, they have crystals that are, 6 feet, 20 feet. You can
Yeah.
imagine the one in Atlantis, the fire crystal, apparently I used to know more about that. I can't remember, but
Yeah,
you know.
I've seen them here at the gem show in Tucson too. One of them I took a picture of myself by it. That thing was about 10 foot tall,
Oh
huge.
my God. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yeah. Yeah, the Tucson Gem Show. I've been there many times. It's
yeah.
quite a assortment from around the world. Um,
Regarding the words new world, do those words play into this incredible paradigm that is opening up and being shown to you? Are those words accurate?
say it, that last part again,
So
Nori.
the words new world, some people are seeing that we're creating a new world or opening to a new world, or the old world's going to fall away. Are those words pertinent to
Oh,
the education that you've gotten, or do they not really
no,
fit?
that terminology is never used. We will evolve into science that we. I mean, I am
Benevolent. Yeah.
thrilled about the medical technology.
Yes.
My great grandfather was up against Rockefeller. He was the president of the Homeopathic Medical Society back in the early 1900s when he took over our medical system, which doctors are basically trained, to prescribe pharmaceuticals for everything.
Yeah.
Drug dealers.
Um, with understanding the reality of the physics of reality, of what we are and consciousness, and understanding that everything, they have on board their ships, they have replicators where you can replicate anything, it's basically recycling matter and structure. Uh, in what they've shared with me is that in the lattice of time, which exists in the crystal, not only the lattice of space does it vibrate, but also lattice in time. And so let's say if you had an injury, um, and um, like a friend of mine, her son just broke his front tooth off. Instead of patching it, the unbroken tooth exists in the lattice of time. And if you can oscillate that and bring it into formation, it restructures. If you lost your arm or leg, that arm or leg still exists in the lattice of time. And one thing that Jenhan shared with me that's profound, of many things he's shared that's profound, is that the universe tends toward perfection. Everything is moving toward this perfection of the singularity of Creator Source, which is at a frequency of pure love. The higher you go in density, the closer you get to that frequency of love, and closer to perfection. And so when you have a disease or an injury or something that happens, if you can tune through time like they do, and I know this is real because when I worked with Dr. Marcel Vogel, I worked on technology that could tune through the fabric of time, and it was proven, thousands of photos, patented and everything. So we have this ability to tune through time. Their technology, of course, is way more advanced. So they go back through time and they take that pattern and they overlay it onto your pattern. Let's say you have cancer, you've got some bad injection happening to you, whatever. You can go back to a point and then with frequency and oscillation, vibration. They use sometimes water, sometimes they use gels, they use light and frequencies that kind of lock it in. And then what happens is the distorted pattern morphs into the more resonant pattern because the universe tends to perfection. If the universe didn't tend for perfection, this wouldn't happen. But it's because of that ability of the universe to do that. When you overlay it, it can cure anything. You don't need pharmaceutical companies anymore. Um, you don't
Yeah,
need, you have energetic medicine that understands the structure of reality. And that's the future that I'm looking forward to. And I'm doing everything in my possible ability, in my small ways that I can help influence, move that direction, to know that that reality is real and that
yeah,
we can bring that about in our world. We need that in our world. We need to end the suffering. There's way too much suffering on this planet.
yeah.
Yes.
And when we talk about bringing the ladders of time from the future into the present, there's actually 1980s technology that did that. The Delavar camera took pictures.
1950s, actually.
50, yeah, there you go. They took pictures of the future and brought it here. And when the time caught up, it was accurate. So, yes, that is absolutely possible. We have proven that even with
Hmm.
initiating Newtonian science.
And you've interviewed several, I know 6 people who have been, at least 5, I know for sure, that are close friends that have shared the experience that they have been on this medical technology and have lost arms and legs, have things inside of them. Even been decapitated,
Yeah.
their bodies chopped in half,
Yeah.
and completely reconstructed perfectly healthy. Though that technology can alleviate anything.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's exciting. That's exciting, and
Yeah.
I feel so privileged and honored to be able to that they kind of recruited me into the science transfer
Yeah.
program, and grateful to work with a very brilliant team of scientists that are using cutting edge technology to help bring this into scientifically verified. Because that's what the world looks toward. They look for
Yeah.
peer-reviewed, scientific, repeatable information that can be put forth to beneficial applications on our planet.
Yes.
Yeah. Dan, what can you share with us about med beds?
Oh, basically what I just shared was that Elena was physically, not channeled stuff or anything. She was taken with Dorian on a ship to the moon. Inside the moon is not not what we think. It has inside huge compartments inside of it, and she witnessed the thousands and thousands of med beds that are been manufactured and they're ready to be released to our world as soon as we can get to the point where we can join the Federation and these can be distributed throughout our planet. And then people would be, according not how much money you have or how powerful you are, but according to the severity or illness, you get in line first, and you get taken care of.
I love
And so, I mean, it'll be like, it sounds like science fiction, I know,
no.
but when you research this, you find out this is not science fiction. This is real. This is
Yeah.
amazingly real.
It is.
We grew up as children, watching science fiction and thinking this is all out of creative
The,
movie script writer's imagination, but it's
yeah,
actually very real.
the Jetsons.
Yeah. Yeah. Jetsons. Hey,
Um, Go ahead, Augie,
yeah.
please.
I am wondering too, have Yen Han told you anything about their world? Do they have a form of government? What do they do if somebody fall off the roof and break a leg? Well, yeah, they probably use a med bed, but or do they have crime? What about their society? Have he told you much?
Oh, great question. Yeah. I love how they handle crime, you know. I mean, we have so much of it going on our planet right now. Some pretty bad people that I love their system. It's so much better than throwing somebody in the clinker
Yeah.
where they just learn how from other criminals, you know, and they don't really improve when they get out several years later. A lot of times they go right back to doing what they were doing. What they do is they have a prison planet. And on this prison planet, where they get taken to, they get an opportunity to evolve. And it's all a matter of you can't fake frequency, right? And so they have the opportunity to bring their frequency up. They have like I guess you'd call it a rehabilitation type
Yeah.
of thing. But the real bad ones, they're not going to tend to get involved in that, and they're going to stay there for a long, long time. But they put them there so it doesn't contaminate society. It kind of isolates the people until these people can get their act together where they can be brought back into society. And I love that concept rather than,
Yeah.
we spend so much money in the prisons and, it just doesn't, um, it just locking people up doesn't cure the root cause of the problem, which is consciousness.
Mm.
Exactly.
That's kind of like what some African tribes used to have. They didn't have prisons. When somebody did something, criminal act, they got together, the whole tribe got together, put him in the middle, and they talk. They discuss what he did wrong, and they impose a form of acceptance. And it was so much better. I read about this, and the Africans are brilliant when it comes to these things.
Oh, sounds like a very wise approach,
Yeah.
rather than just, but
Mm.
yeah, we we have a lot to deal with on this planet, and
Yeah.
a lot of the problem is that the dark cabal, or you want to call it, infiltrated our information systems a long time ago,
Yeah.
especially our media, and so weaponized a lot of people's minds, and we have a lot of division going on because of that. And until people can understand history that's been hidden from them, how they came about it, and how it's centrally controlled toward an agenda that's not in the interest of everybody on this planet. So, we'll get there.
And, and regarding our role, the individuals that all want the best of, of all that we're talking about, what practices or disciplines can can we do or can help people to stay centered during these uncertain times that will contribute to the frequency of this taking um, what shape, taking shape in our reality. But
Well, stay aware, because each mind is affecting the collective mind,
yeah,
and you know, um, whatever you need to do, meditate. I should be doing more meditation myself, but also so much activity. But just doing acts of kindness and doing things to help people, it helps with the frequency. Doing
Yeah.
uh that's about all we can do, really. But in a way, because we're all fractals of a collective mind, as you know, anything that happens in a fractal affects the collective
yes.
completely. So, um, m make your own life one of a higher frequency, of find what motivates you,
Yeah.
what brings you joy, what brings you happiness. You're always being guided from within your soul's
Uh,
purpose.
I
Love
see
it.
we have 5 minutes left here, but what can you say to the people that is out there? They're full of fear. They're wondering, oh gosh, look at everything. We're gonna have civil war. We're gonna have another pandemic. We're gonna have this. We're gonna have that. What can you tell them, especially after you mentioned the two timelines? We will go down that timeline. That's going to be wonderful in the future, but how we get there is,
Yeah. Well, the shit could hit the fan, between now and then. I mean, anything's possible, right? But I see a lot of the dark elements getting exposed left and right. And, more people are, it appears that the more people are becoming awake and aware. And just to hold that vision. Don't go into despair and fear and hopelessness, because that feeds that reality. Because we are creative beings that when that's the dark cabal's biggest fear is that we become aware of the power within us, to see and remember the universe tends toward perfection and evolves toward true love. So, and in the science, it shows that there's that power through love that
yeah,
dissonance, as Jenhan put it, dissonance cannot attune to an ordered state of geometrical resonance, of which the universe is an ordered state of geometrical resonance. So when you use the power of love and you use your creative vision to see the world that you want to see in your heart, in the world, you're in a very powerful place to affect that reality to be formed into the future,
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, because
as
we
you
live,
both know very well.
yeah, since we live in a mind-created universe, like quantum mechanics tell us, what is in our mind is very instrumental in creating everything in our environment.
Unquestionably.
Dan, I know you're busy and are researching and communicating with scientists and Elena, and I know you're very busy. But if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, do you have a website or anything you would share with them? And if not, that's okay too.
Oh, marcelvogel.org. Not all the latest information is there. I'm getting ready to do a presentation in Dubai with the
Oh,
scientists, in which we'll hope to show some incredible revelations of science, to prove that this is not just theory. Um, but um, but that's still top secret, so
Yeah,
that's coming.
Tell Yen to come with you.
so excited. I'm so excited. Well, Dan, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And whether this is the dawn of the new age, a rescue, a projection, a collapse, one thing is certain, how we respond in love, in awareness,
Yes.
in action. That's really what shapes what comes next. So, Dan, thank you so much for being with us. So grateful. And we want you to come back on Broadcast Team Alpha and talk with us over
Well,
there again, too. So, thank you.
always honored to do that, and you two are like incredible movers toward that reality. That always in gratitude for all the work that both of you do. And as Jenhan said to me, much enjoyment yet to come.
I love that. I'm
Yeah.
going to hang on to that.
Yeah, would you say hello to Jen Han from us, would you?
Yes, absolutely. All right.
All
Take
right.
care. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening. And you may want to watch this whole thing again. It is filled
Yes.
with pearls of wisdom and amazing science that we kind of even may not be able to wrap our brain around yet. So much love, everybody. Thank you. Augie, thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much for being with us. And now we're on to the next.
That was phenomenal. Dan Willis at his best. Think of those technologies when they become commonplace and people could understand and use them. Using crystal technology to communicate between continents and people on different continents without being plugged in the wall for electricity. This is phenomenal. And then the next speaker is Frank Jacob, phenomenal researcher. Well known, he is everywhere on conferences and shows and radio and TV. Listen really close to him because there's a depth to his understanding that is almost unparalleled.
Yes, and here we are with the next speaker. Oh, you're gonna love this. We have Frank Jacob with us. And he's well known. He is everywhere out there on wherever there is a microphone. And I do want to say just a few things about him for the 3 or 4 of you out there that never heard of him before. And Frank is an international award-winning filmmaker and also known for The Ultimate Rush, Solar Revolution, Hacking from Mars, but he is also sought after as a radio, TV guest, and a frequently speaking at conferences out there. Wherever there is a microphone, he's probably like me. He's never met a microphone that he didn't like. So, so anyway, he also speak on transhumanism, AI, the secret technologies, human evolution, timelines emerging, and the parallel worlds. And this time, he's going to talk about something that nobody has ever heard about before. So, welcome to the conference.
Thanks for inviting me, Aga. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be good because we talked a little bit before, and you told me that you have come up with some explanations to things that people have not heard about before. And that's why I'm going to be all ears, and so will everybody else.
Well, I'm happy to oblige.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
I mean, you've laid out some topics here that are, of course, relative to your conference, and you're interested in exploring ascension. You mentioned the ET rescue ideas, and I think you mentioned simulation and some kind of an extinction event. These are all topics that, to me, are all kind of related in a way, but probably in a way that is a little bit more, is a little, it maybe is a diversion from maybe what some of the other guests would, in the direction that they would go with the topic. Because in the last couple of years, I don't know if you've been following my work, but I've sort of been, as I've been developing these master classes, as they've now turned into, I started off calling them webinars,
Yeah.
which I guess is what they are technically, on my own channel on cyberhive.tv, and I was doing these webinars as a way to fill in for not doing film work. So I created this hybrid of, exploring filmic elements into a dialogue that has more of the format of a class. Then, you can get points across, you can break off, you can explain things, you can pull excerpts out of books and whatnot. And when I was doing that in the last couple of years, I stumbled on a very fascinating topic.
Frank, you also find more information about that on your website, right?
Well, right, exactly. Like, I mean, I have my name. If you can remember my name, Frank Jacob, and add .com at the end, then you'll find me.
Good
And
deal.
you'll find links to the CyberHive website off of that as well. So maybe make it easier like that, because not everyone will maybe know how to spell CyberHive.
That's good.
Um,
I have been to that website, and I tell you, folks, you really need to go have a look because there is amazing stuff. That's a lot of it you never heard of before. So you got to go have a look. Okay, back to
well,
you, Frank.
thanks, Aga. It's just yeah, so in the course of, developing this format, I've been going deeper and deeper into following where that would lead, and eventually I stumbled on a topic that I'd heard about, many of us have heard about. It's sort of out there on the web. It has to do with Gnosticism. It's one of those esoteric words that people don't really, they think they have an idea, or it conjures kind of, ancient history and early Christian groups and whatnot. And so, but I stumbled upon, what I guess would be considered one of the last remaining or the last true Gnostics on this planet, who's devoted probably the last 4 decades of his life to mining the truth about Gnosis and about who the Gnostics were. A man by the name of John Lamb Lash. And so I stumbled on a YouTube video of his related to, I think it was simulation or something, and I listened to it, and I was like, this guy has some interesting ideas, and I put it aside. And then about a year went by, and I was looking for a new topic, and I wanted to bring in a topic that is, very, very sensitive to a lot of people, which had to do with which includes elements of revisionist history and World War II
Yeah.
causes, right? So, but I didn't want to just look at it as an academic dry study. I wanted to bring in the metaphysical aspect of it. And lo and behold, I recalled, having found John Lash's video, and I decided to dig a little deeper into his material. And lo and behold, he's authored an amazing book, which I can only recommend if people look up his book, Not in His Image. If you want to learn about true Gnosticism, that's a great starting point because it has lots of references. So I took up looking at that material, and once I got pulled into the Gnostic vortex, or the portal, let's call it that, I learned that there is something that people think about as Gnosticism, but there's the true Gnosticism, as there always is somehow in the world,
Yeah.
right? You hear about something superficially, and then you, if you really look at it carefully, you realize that, okay, this is only the superficial stuff. I want to get to the real stuff,
Yeah.
and you realize that there's this sort of pop Gnosticism out there, which talks about a group of people called Gnostics. They were the early Christians, and they had these esoteric studies that were cut out of the Bible. And they talk about, the divine spark, and that we're trapped here on this planet, and we have to, learn how to ascend, and spiritually, and then escape from here, and to get out of the clutches of the demiurge, this sort of satanic figure which has the planet, which created the planet, and which is keeping the planet hostage and keeping us trapped here, or harvesting our energy. And so you get into that, and then you realize that when you realize that that's actually not true, you're like, whoa, that's a big diversion. It's actually, not only not true, but it's 180 degrees in the other direction. So you find out that the true Gnostics were actually not teaching that the earth was created by a demiurge, and that, these beings called archons, created us and created this universe and keep us trapped here. What you find out is that actually that's just a diversionary story as well. What the truth of the matter is, according to the true source material, which is, when I'm talking about Gnosticism, by the way, I'm referring to the materials that were uncovered in 1945, and the result of which is being called the Nag Hammadi Library,
Hmm.
which is something which wasn't actually published in English until the 1970s. So it lay kind of dormant for almost a quarter century before, actually for a quarter century before, the English speaking world, or the scholarly world, let's say, even, or the non-scholarly world. I guess the biblical scholars were into this stuff, right, and started to go through the documents. But you find out that the material comes out of this small collection of 52 codices, fragmentary leftovers from a vast body of material which these so-called Gnostics actually, embodied, and that the Gnostics had nothing to do with Christians. In fact, they were totally the enemies of the early Christians, and they were actually teaching something which was telling people to stay away from the Christian teachings, and the idea of a redeemer, and the idea that we're on a prison planet and that we need to be saved. And the way they frame it is based on their own shamanic practices, because you find out that these Gnostics were intellectual shamans whose first origin has been dated back to about 6,000 years ago. So they go back way, way before, any of this stuff,
Yeah.
before the Abrahamic religions, before any of this happened. They've been kind of doing these shamanic journeys and this cataloging and archiving and connecting with the what they call the planetary animal mother, and they gave her a name, and that name is Sophia. And so, as the story goes, what's interesting about the Gnostic material is that their technology, or let's just say the technology they use to get to those states of consciousness, and enter what they call the organic light, revealed what is today more and more being uncovered in as we enter into the era of modern plasma physics, which has been
Mm.
kind of suppressed as well. So we're finding out that the more we learn about plasma physics, the more we realize that these ancient seers, these intellectual shamans, actually were onto that. What they were describing in story form is actually physics in story, really, if you look at it that way. Mythology as physics and story. And so, the entity they're calling Sophia actually was a electric, like a torrent, a massive plasmic Birkeland current, which resides at the center of the galaxy along with others, and they called them aeons. If you can imagine these giant dragon-like swirling torrents of plasmic energy glowing and bursting with electricity, living at the center, glowing. And if you look out into the clear sky, if you have one in front to look at it and you try to locate the center of our galaxy, you can see that glow emanating. And in fact, if you look out now in Hubble and some of the other telescopes that we've now been able to place and look out from the Earth, we see in all the galaxies a center, and that center is glowing. And that's what the
Yeah.
Gnostics called the pleroma. That's the habitat of these aeons. These are like godlike divinities, even though they didn't like to use the word God or anything. That's why they called them aeons. Well, it turns out that one of those aeons left that center, that pleroma, and tumbled and collided into the matter, which they called the kenoma. And that ended up, in the sense of having created an experiment to create a genome which should materialize as what we call the anthropos, humanity. She ended up falling out of her habitat because she cared so much about it that she was out there with it in the matter. And the way the story unfolds is that she eventually turned into the matter planet that we know as Earth. And then we essentially arose out of her body. So she started to dream us once she turned into denser material. And then we essentially emerged out of that dream of hers. And that's kind of how it evolved. And so the Earth is actually not this demonic place that's a prison planet. It's actually the divine body of an aeon which came here and turned herself into the world to provide us with a pristine paradise for which we can then evolve and then turn into the optimal form of the anthropos, to evolve into this, genius potential. The Gnostics called it nous, this divine intelligence that's inside of us. It's not this divine spark. That's kind of a Talmudic rip-off term. It's actually the divine intelligence which is in us that has this coding for us to kind of take what the aeons embodied in their torrential plasmic form and turn it into material. So we are actually the epitome of the divine extension into matter, if you will. So the idea of ascension is really turned on its head. What the ascension was in terms of the Gnostics, and I'm speaking here strictly about hardcore Gnostic material and intel, Age, that very few people really know about, because that they've been used to the other side of the story, and that's the one that we hear from David Icke and so many other people, that were kind of trapped here, that were in a prison, etc. Well, the real source of the story is the Nag Hammadi, and if you really want to find out the truth of that story, you should really look at the material carefully to make a distinction between the fake narrative, which was hijacked by the church, the early church fathers, which is what turned into this sort of a bastardized version of Gnosis or Gnosticism, and the original source material, which actually has elements of the true creation story in it, buried amongst a lot of non-Gnostic material, right? So this is one of the key distinctions. And so once you understand that, you realize that ascension has to do with us learning who we really are and learning how to embody that divine seed that been given, that we can blossom into. We can actually, the creators who designed this experiment, they don't know what the outcome is going to be. And there are no rules and regulations and laws. The only two laws in the universe, according to the Gnostics, is the law of free will and novelty. So there, the universe needs novelty, and novelty can only be ever expressed through absolute free will. Everything else is layered on top of it, and those forces, those demiurge negative forces, they have a place as well in the Gnostic cosmology, but that comes out of something which resulted in from Sophia's tumble into the Kenoma when she literally collided with the dusty plasma, as they call it out there in the universe. She kind of left a trace of the coding that she brought with her in the material, and that coding quickly formed into something sort of an inorganic life force that turned into
Mm.
something they called the archons. And those archons are kind of there before even mankind or the earth ever materialized. They were there first. And they actually were the ones who created this, simulacrum, the stereoma, as it's called in some circles. Like Sophia gave them a task and said, get out of my hair. Here, build this, right? So they built like the solar system we know it as around us, minus the sun, the earth, and the moon, while she was trying to figure out how to get oriented in her new environment, which this is an unprecedented event that happened. We have to understand that. So this is what's written in that cosmology. It's very, very fascinating. And I've been exploring that now for the last 2 years. And that's really, opened my eyes to a lot of the perspectives that are out there. And it makes me wonder why, like people talk about needing to be rescued. For example, like that's one of your topics, right? The ETs, are they going to rescue us?
Yeah.
Well, you know that now when you know the backstory to, the creation of the earth from the Gnostic perspective, you don't have to accept it, but I encourage people to explore it because, the alternative belief is that there's this, for example, some people believe we live in a simulation, and that this planet was created by these other forces. Well, if you're going to believe that, then why don't you believe the actual story? Because that story has no evidence. That's a story that's based on simply believing it because somebody told you the story. Whereas the Gnostic material is actually built on evidence, and the evidence is now, like I suggested earlier, you can actually look at modern cosmology and plasma physics, and you can begin to actually find the correlation of that creation story in the actual way the universe functions if, and now this is a big if you embrace the idea that the universe isn't created by a Big Bang and that we aren't living in particle physics world of relativity theory, which is all mathemagics, by the way, also never been proven. All of it
Yeah.
is theoretical. None of it has ever been experientially proven. But there is a science that has experiential proof, and that is plasma physics. And
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is basically they prove how galaxies are formed. They can prove it in a laboratory based on this new cosmology. So if you embrace that plasma physics cosmology and along with it something called the electric universe, that the universe isn't empty and the universe isn't driven by gravity, but that the prime force the driving force that forms everything in the cosmos is actually electricity. We now have proven that. In fact, that's been proven about 100 years ago
Yeah.
already when they discovered that the whole universe is a massive cosmic network. And finally, 100 years later, we were able to launch, radio telescopes, and we can look into the infrared, and we can now see, oh my God, it isn't empty after all. It is totally networked. And what do we see? We see these massive plasmic currents, what they call Birkeland currents, running in
Mhm.
every direction and nodes forming everywhere. And it's funny as heck because if you look at the picture of the universe in a plasma spectrum and you put it up against a magnification of the human brain of neurons and the firing of electrons in our brain, guess
Yeah.
what? It looks
Looks the
one to
same.
one. It looks the same. It's microcosm meets macrocosm. And so ever
Yeah.
since I've realized that, I'm starting to kind of question a lot of the narratives about ETs. And as you know, man, I've explored that topic. I've made films about, well, what is it there? Mars, and we've talked about it in Solar Revolution, and we just made a new film that we premiered here last year called Extraterrestrial Species Almanac. So I'm definitely into exploring the other angle as well. But I think if you're honest with yourself and you really want to know, you have to explore this ancient material which was left for us.
Mhm.
And just because it's ancient doesn't mean it's obsolete. Believe me, those ancient shamanic telestai, as they call themselves, those who are aimed, they were smart people and they really solved a lot of problems. And it's funny how in their mythology they left for us traces of their origin story. So those are, those are two kind of topics that are directly, affected by this cosmology of plasma and the idea of the electric universe and the idea of needing a savior, which they were adamantly against because they said, look, Sophia came here. She brought us a planet. She made the planet and she allowed us to come here and have an optimal habitat. It's now up to us to connect who we are with who she is and combine with the Sophianic dreaming and step into another level of consciousness, the merging of a divine aeon with the divine aeon's experiment, the anthropos, and take this to the next level. There is no outside source which can possibly match the integrity and the entrainment of that symbiosis, which was birthed from the very beginning with this intention. The idea of adding the extraterrestrial element to it is a point I raised on a recent episode of the Quartet when we still had that show running. I don't know if it's going to now after our dear friend John Peterson left the planet. But we talked about the idea of other extraterrestrial races coming to Earth. And the fact is, and if you look at that, if you want to look at that scientifically as well, and add some kind of empirical evidence to it, you realize that, humanity and the human brain is entrained with the Earth's as well. The whole Earth as a being, as a living organism,
Yeah.
has frequencies and has electrical current, and it has Schumann resonances, and it has a magnetosphere. And our bodies and our brains are completely entrained one to one to optimally thrive within exactly those specific defined parameters. And for another species to come here, or for us to go to another planet that doesn't have the identical characteristics that we have here on Earth, it would be a living nightmare, Agi. I would tell you that. You would need to have, obviously, some kind of a suit on. You would need to be inside of a ship, but you would never have the full experience that we human beings have here. And on top of it, we have all this amazing hardware in us that connects us to other dimensions of existence. So
Hmm.
that's a good starting place. I don't know if you want to jump in or if I triggered any
Yeah.
questions on you, but
What you explained here, that could give you the floor of understanding for the acceleration of consciousness and actually ascension, wouldn't it?
yes, because that is, I mean, if that isn't ascension, I don't know what is, Age. We
Yeah.
haven't even fully ascended to what we've been designed to become. So it's like ascending to me more than anything is like shaking off the overlay. And the overlay comes from where? Well, the
Yeah.
overlay, according to the Gnostics, and it's also in other sources, okay? I'm just leaning heavily on the Gnostic material here because I'm deeply enmeshed in it. But believe me, there are other sources of this. There's other paradigms that correlate to this. It
Yeah.
has to do with people call it simulation, for example, right?
Uh,
Well, there is a word for simulation in the Gnostic texts, and that's called hal. So we know the archons deploy simulation tactics to obscure the human perception.
yeah. So when we accept that there is an acceleration of consciousness and a form of ascension, where would that lead us? Where do we end up? Where do we go? And what is left behind? Are there negative entities that be left behind and we kind of halfway decent people, we go somewhere else? What do you think?
No, I think we don't go anywhere. I think that we realize that we are already at the final destination. We don't need to go anywhere. We are living literally on a living, breathing paradise, a living being, the body of a goddess that came here. So we are at like one of the most sweetest spots that it could possibly exist in the entire universe. Why do we need to go anywhere? If anything, we need to deepen our experience on that planet with that being. For us to
Mhm.
go anywhere, it's to go into deeper communion with those
Yeah.
beings which are living side by side with us. There are entities and beings that are part of the human realm which take form and they're shapeshifters and all kinds of things that are around us that are part of what people call paranormal realities. But in a lot of ways, they're just simply other levels, other realms of the human experience that are in a subtler, frequency that we don't perceive if we're continually being diverted and obscured with the fog of an archontic simulation overlay, which is trying to prevent us from making that deep connection, that community with the earth. And I believe once we achieve that, okay, once we actually shake off that archontic overlay, then the experience here becomes its fullest expression. Where we go from there, Age, I think, nobody knows, because why would they know? How could you know that? You,
Yeah.
you don't even know what it's like to be living in that divine state of purity without all this stress of negativity. And you look at the world. I mean, look at what's going on around us right now on an accelerated basis, right? Continuously, we're being bombarded with a framing that everyone is and trained in, usually coming off their mobile phones or their computer screens or their TV, their televisions, if they still watch televisions, or any
Yeah.
other form of media for that matter, which is tying us into a drama,
Yeah.
which is a fictitious narrative, which has been intensified. And I would say that it really began to take on another level altogether, starting about 2,000 years ago. And it has been deepening and intensifying ever since to kind of a climax. And this
Mhm.
has been also written about, I mean, the in the Abrahamic religions, they talk about the apocalypse, and they talk about the return of the Messiah, and they're all waiting for the end,
Yeah.
they're waiting for the final days, right? And as well as the religious aspect, the religions, they have the priests and the rabbis, that are the authorities that are dishing out the truth about the scriptures that you're too stupid to understand. So they give you that, and then there's the technocratic parallel, which has emerged in the last 50 to 60 years. Or even longer, you could argue. I mean, but let's just say 50, 60 years, technology has kind of taken to the forefront of the
Yeah.
world. And now you have the technocratic priesthood, right? The test realists, the mindset, the people that are selling us the idea that we're going to be giving birth to a new Messiah, but that isn't going to be a Messiah coming in the clouds in the form of Jesus or Buddha or whoever. It's going to come in the form of an artificial general intelligence followed by an artificial super intelligence.
Yeah.
And that once that super intelligence is birthed on this world, according to these priests of the technocratic world, humanity is basically going to either shift over into the world of the transhuman existence. In other words, we abandon the biological vessel as an inferior,
Yeah.
flawed,
Yeah.
limited, encapsulated, whatever consciousness, and we're going to abandon that and move into this ideal world of immortality, right? Well, what do the priests of the religions tell us? We're going to we're going to live forever with God or whatever. And the technocrats saying we're going to live forever in this technocratic simulated reality that they're building for us right now, right? So it's
Yeah.
very interesting how we have these two worlds coming to the fore right now in the so-called end days. And I don't know if you're finding this, but the pacing of the dramatic events that are taking place in the world is increasing. The distance between events is shortening.
Mhm.
We had another one now with this whole, the assassination of that poor guy, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
right? So again, and now because you're finding because there's such a density of narrative, we couldn't let the guy just be shot and grieve and be shocked because we just watched a live assassination on, in front of our eyes. No, within 2 minutes, there was already a narrative that was formed that was turned into kind of a form of branding for a polarity. And
Yeah.
that polarity, says, we're going to keep fighting. This is he's our new hero. So we've got a new Martin Luther King or Kennedy or whoever instantly, even though I never heard the guy's name
Yeah.
before it happened. And then, maybe forgive me. I know there's lots of people that know him, but honestly, if you aren't paying attention to that particular blogosphere, why would you know him? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's far more impactful people in history that you do know and have heard about. But anyway, they've made him into this new martyr. And at the same time, we have the equal polarity of well, I guess they call them leftists, right? The people that were celebrating and partying and releasing disgusting TikTok videos saying, great, who's next, right? I mean, it shows you that there's a lack of empathy, and
Yeah.
this aspect that I touched upon very early on about the archontic overlay, this simulation. It includes kind of the zombification of the human spirit, meaning
Yeah.
the bastardization of those natural senses that we have, which include empathy. So we're becoming less empathic. The fact that somebody could actually, celebrate another human being who has just lost their life, the precious thing that we all have,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
fact, on camera, and are happy about it, means that they've gone to a deep level of insanity, and and really, there's a certain level of unconsciousness which has spread like a virus, if I want to borrow that fake narrative as well. But let's just say there's this parasite out there which has spread, and so those of us who are working against getting the truth out are facing that overwhelming mass of unconsciousness out there. And so this is really a lot of what has to do with the ascension and is getting past all of that, you know?
Yeah. And in that creative process, from the very beginning of our reality, past reality up to now, you also speak of there are different timelines, and the timelines are merging. In the different timelines, there are different realities. I may be in another timeline also that is in some way connected to this one, but I am not aware of it. How does that fit into the creative process that you talk about?
Well, timelines have to do with something that's called consensus.
Hmm.
Now, everyone has their own little window on reality, or let's just say those who are not too caught up in this the diversionary tactics, which people are calling simulation. I just call it as a diversion. I'm absolutely convinced that we live in reality. I don't believe that we live in a construct, a computer program, and all that stuff. I mean, that's just nobody can prove that. It's unfalsifiable, and I've abandoned unfalsifiable arguments. I find it's much more realistic to go out there and touch the earth and know that I can actually touch a divine being and I can connect to it. So, the idea is here that everyone has their window on reality, and everyone's window is morphed and affected by what they perceive and what their life experience has taught them to how to interpret what they experience in the world. And so none of us can actually perceive the identical reality. It's a physical impossibility. But there are certain rule sets that we all agree upon. Like we agree that there's a software called Zoom. And then if I load that into my computer and dial these numbers in, presto, this guy Agen Nost appears on the screen, and I can have a conversation with him even though he's sitting 5,000 miles away, right? I agree that there is a construct called a computer, which is made of semiconductors and microprocessors, and little electrical nodes that move around and create, the magic of computation. I believe that. I believe that if I go outside and I walk in front of a car moving at about 40 miles an hour, I'm going to get crushed and I'll probably end up dead. I believe that, if I breathe, my lungs are going to inhale something called oxygen in a ratio of 21%, which keeps me alive. This is what I'm talking about. This is a consensus. There's a
Yeah.
consensus reality that we all agree to. And that reality is dominated by the average of the perception all of us share. That's what we think of as a timeline. And there are people that are advanced and advancing new ideas and new cosmologies. Like I'm talking about plasma cosmology. In a way, I'm trying to birth and put seeds for you or the audience into another timeline. That timeline is dominated not by the paradigm of relativity theory, and Einstein is a genius, but more about the Tesla, plasmic,
Yeah.
Mendeleev, the etheric, Akashic version of reality, which was erased, which was canceled 100 years ago when they brought in, when J.P. Morgan shut down Tesla, and they slandered his work and they slandered his science, and they brought in a mathematician called Albert Einstein who was completely unknown, and they made him a hero, and they turned math and theory into the new science. So it's been canceled. Now I'm trying to re-emerge or trying to rebirth that existing paradigm. And if I succeed in that in any kind of a large scale way, and I have a bunch of followers like that, check it out my channel and do my webinars, by the way, which you should do, you will end up opening your mind to this other timeline. And the more of us that get fixed on these truthful paradigms and recapturing this sort of lost history and straightening out the errors, which is a big thing in Gnosticism, by the way. They don't
Yeah.
believe in evil, they believe in error gone uncorrected, turning into evil. So we correct those errors. Guess what happens? We actually create a new timeline. And even though, that consensus timeline that we have right now, where Charlie Kirk gets, killed, is running, my timeline, and I can assure you that the one I'm developing that is going to lead us back into the plasma cosmology and the new age of the future, the new science of the future, the space science, this plasma science, is actually running parallel to that consensus timeline. And so, it's a matter of how effective I'm able to convey that information that's going to create a polarity and begin to divert crowds away from the consensus timeline onto a different timeline. And eventually, it's not a battle of timelines that takes place. What happens is it's like a plant that doesn't get water. That big plant that's running now, that consensus timeline, is going to get less and less attention and less water. And my plant's going to get more water and better
Yeah.
fertilizers. Guess what's going to happen? That timeline's going to die, just like a plant that sits in the sun, right? And doesn't get any
Yeah.
water. So that's timelines 101, if I would say, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I think so. Now, within this creative reality that we are living in here, where does extraterrestrials fit in? They're coming maybe from their reality, visiting our reality, or how do you see that?
Well, I also have another spin on that, and that's what you were talking about in the very beginning, because in the process of me working on the material toward of this latest webinar, Ancient X-Files and the Plasma Matrix, I stumbled upon two peer-reviewed documents, like studies that were done in the Journal of Modern Physics, which talk about extraterrestrial life in the thermosphere, plasmas. And what you find out is that plasma isn't just some gas out there, and that's seen in the telescopes or worked on in a lab. What you find out is that plasma is actually something which has the ability to take on kind of a cellular structure. It even creates sleeves like cells do, and it begins to take on the appearance of what we would describe in biology as early bacteria cells and things like that. And but it's plasma. And what you find out is that this plasma has been around us since the very beginning of life on this planet. And in fact, the studies, these studies are mind-blowing, Age, because what they reveal to us and what I lay out very clearly in the webinar is that what most people feel, like what 95% of what people are seeing in the sky out there and think are UFOs, like those lights that land that people call in and they show up and then they kind of zip around a bit and make weird moves and then they come in formation, and then they fly off again. Those are these plasma entities. They are not extraterrestrials at all. They're very terrestrial. But we don't understand them and nobody's talking about them. And I was shocked honestly, to find these papers out there because it revealed to me that there's a body of scientists deeply connected to the governments of the world that have been studying this phenomenon for well over several decades. And they have film recordings of it. And I show some of those in the webinar, by the way. And they show that these entities exist and that they literally, they fly around in the airspace that that this in the same airspace that our pilots fly around in. They show up in thunderstorms. They show up in volcanoes. There was just another video released the other day that they were showing that this object was zipping along and they shot a torpedo at it. I don't know if you caught that, but then the torpedo ran into the object, and what
Yeah,
happened? The torpedo was just gobbled up. And this
yeah,
is absolutely consistent with the studies that they were releasing that these are plasma forms and they're highly energized. They're so energetic. They're pure electromagnetism. And they act interestingly, they act as if they are conscious. They act as if they're little beings. the only question that remains to me right now is, is the intelligence that they're expressing, is it a terrestrial intelligence that is connected to, for example, Sophia, or is it a self-generated intelligence which blossoms when enough of this energy comes together to form these orbs?
Yeah.
Or is it something like more on the level of a probe or a drone sent by some external thing that's in the interstellar space around the Earth? And to that effect, another very interesting material I came across, which I talk about in the webinar, is a paper that was written by Chandra Wickramasinghe is his name. I always get the pronunciation wrong. Wickramasinghe is an Indian man. He did this, and it was published by Robert Temple. And in this, he's talking about a phenomenon in this interstellar space in the Earth-Moon constellation, which is called the Lagrange points. And these Lagrange points are these vacuum places where there is no gravity. They're little pockets of empty space,
Yeah.
like a void. And what they found is that a man discovered in the 60s that those pockets, Lagrange points, are collectors of plasma, of dusty plasma, little rice like grain shaped plasmic particles, dust particles, which get trapped in this zero gravity zone. And they've been there for billions of years, accumulating, accumulating, accumulating. And what he discovered through his calculations, this is an astrophysicist, this is Chandra, is that after a certain amount of accumulation of these particles and energenification of these particles, they begin to act like kind of intelligence. They act like a kind of a hard drive. They have storage capacity. They have the capacity to send signals, to receive signals, and they act like a giant, like super brain. And if you can imagine, we have like 10 to the 11 neuron connections. It's often said that we have more neuron connections in our brain than there are stars in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Well, these Kordylewski, they call them Kordylewski clouds because the man who discovered them was called Kazimierz Kordylewski, a Polish man. And his findings were finally confirmed in 2019 when Chandra Wickramasinghe did that paper, and they calculated that the density of the connections between the plasmic nodes in these clouds is 10 to the power of 52. So we're talking about all the minds of all of humanity together through all time, times a magnitude of,
Yeah.
millions.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you wanted to talk about an intelligence, an extraterrestrial intelligence, which is right here, but outside of our Earth, it would be these Kordylewski clouds, right? So are you still with me?
Uh, I have a little comment right at the end
Okay,
of
go
what
ahead.
you say.
I'm going to take it to one more level, and then we're probably out of time. But yeah, tell me.
Okay. What I wanted to say also that I think you probably should study. I think it is James Gates that talk about plasma, and he says it has intelligence.
Yes.
And I think also that is probably proven. I've seen a video of a thunderstorm, and it's lit up by all kinds of lightning inside. And in one frame, they see a humanoid, huge, 1,000 feet tall humanoid in front of the lightning inside of the thunderstorm, and then it collapses.
Well, I mean, all these things are very interesting to observe in context of this new information which I've come across. And
Uh-huh.
I was shocked because I'm asking myself, look, if they know that 95% of the UFO and UIP phenomenon is fully explainable through this plasma orb phenomenon. And I'm talking about Foo Fighters. I'm talking about TikTok, the TikTok UFO that came down and sat over the ocean and they chased it and then it zipped off again. All these behaviors that they're describing, that these pilots have described, and that the military, these people that are clueless as to what those things are, the speed they travel at, the maneuvering they're able to do, all of this has already been explained in the plasma cosmology as detailed in these papers.
Yeah.
That leaves only maybe 5% of anomalous behavior, which could probably be factored into reverse engineered human experiments, which they don't want us to know about.
Yeah.
So if you're asking and you're wondering, after all these 25 years of Stephen Greer's disclosure, why we still have not gotten disclosure, my newest guess at it, and I can pretty much back it up with some pretty solid empirical evidence, is that the real mystery of the universe is plasma, and they don't want us to know that. That's why they snuffed it out and canceled it 100 years ago. And they'd rather implant fake ufology researchers into this field and keep us forever chasing carrots of
Hmm.
glowing objects and experiences and visions that people have, which can all, by the way, also be explained. Let me tell you something about that.
Yeah.
The visions that
Well,
people have, they
we
can be explained.
we got a couple of minutes left.
Okay, well then we're not going to be able to get into that. But let me just, summarize then that essentially
Yeah.
everything that we've learned about with UAPs and UFOs can be reopened with respect to the plasma cosmology, which I delve really deeply into. It's like a 6-hour masterclass. If you really want to learn about that, I do a very, very clear deep dive looking at all the empirical evidence that describes that. So, what we're left in the end, with is we're left with the mystery of this other life form that's been living parallel to us, which we misattribute to being extraterrestrial. And that the visions that people have and the communication they have with these beings can also be attributed to the idea that when humans come into the presence of massive electromagnetic distortion fields, which these give off when they come in near proximity, we begin to actually visualize and see things. We can have experiences. We can have spiritual experiences, alien abduction experiences. All of this has been documented in one of our films. We mentioned a scientist called Michael Persinger, who actually did studies on something called the God helmet, which proved that electromagnetic fields induce psychotropic, spiritual, and alien abduction visions in people who are subjected to them. So we have to rule all of this stuff out, and we have to kind of start all over again and see what's left over to find out, what really is life and what is our role here on this planet. And if there are extraterrestrials, let's just say that Three Eye Atlas is part of some extraterrestrial technology, and the other one that surfaced, C25R2, which they're calling Swan, which is much larger, 100 times bigger, is related to it, then looking at things in terms of the electric universe and plasma cosmology makes it less an object which is external and more of a part of a living system which is coming to deliver maybe messages, which passes through here like that Swan one passes through every 22,554 years, I believe, or something like that. It
Yeah.
comes through and it's obviously leaving a trace because in Gnosticism, everything is material. There's no separation between spirit and matter. So what we perceive around us, and even the things we can't perceive because they're in other, imperceptible frequencies that we are not able to receive, those
Mm.
things are material, and those things play out in our world to a certain degree. And so what we're seeing out there, I think, in these comets that are coming at us, is that another living, fascinating example of how we are in a greater biosphere that even extends beyond the Earth.
Mhm. Yeah. Boy, that was interesting. Let people know where they can get a hold of you and your books. And absolutely, I think you should go have a look at that.
Well, as I said in the beginning, if people are still listening, I'd be more than happy to hear that. Um, the easiest way is Frank Jacob, which is my name.com. That's where I have links to all of the material I've just been describing. If you want to go straight to the webinars, maybe you'll put a link down below. But I have cyberhive.tv, and that's kind of the masterclass center. That's where I publish all of these works. I've done so far. I've got a catalog of 4 of them. They're all in English. Most of them are in German. I translate for the people that are maybe in German or want to learn about this material in German. I take a great deal of effort to create German subtitles and German text on the screen to Germanify them, Germanicize them. Maybe that's a better word.
Yeah.
And so that's what's out there. And I mean, as far as books go, I'm still working on it. We have films out there, Packing for Mars, Solar Revolution, as mentioned, Klaus Donna Chronicles. I touch on all of those. I bring in elements of them into the webinars too, so it's a good springboard for you if you really want to take a course
Yeah.
down another branch of the sciences that is, hardly ever discussed or filled with a lot of inaccuracies. And I do it all in a non-dramatic kind of very down to earth way, even though some of the material is just mind blowing. Like I think what I was just talking about with the Kordylewski clouds and plasma should blow a lot of people's minds that are in, involved in or interested in ufology.
Yeah, and to the listeners, I would say that I have studied quantum mechanics quite a bit, and believe it or not, a lot of the stuff he talked about is explained through quantum mechanics. And beyond that, that's your job to research on your own. Start with his website, and you'll get an education and a half. So thank you very much, Frank, for being with us. And then on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker then is Geraldine Orozco. She is one of the deepest thinkers when it comes to understanding the universe. I have learned a lot from her.
Yes, and here we are with our next guest here on the round table. And who better to talk about these issues than Geraldine Orozco? I want to say a few things about her because she is well known, but there may be a couple of people out there that don't know. And this will be interesting because it's a rare event to find someone that is certified in so many areas of the healing arts. She's the owner and the founder of Bay Area Meditation Center. And also she teaches meditation, hypnotherapist. She is a neurolinguistic practitioner. She also teaches mindfulness, stress reduction. She's a therapist in that. She teaches Qigong, is a master and certified in quantum energy healing, and the list goes on. But what has started especially for her was 10 years ago, she had a life-changing interdimensional experience, which resulted in the activation of tremendous psychic abilities. Since then, she has had hypnotic regression and found she has had lifelong history of alien and interdimensional contact. And we want to talk to her about what is her take on the simulation event and the new world coming and all the rest of it that Nori talked about. So welcome, Geraldine.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Augie and Nori. What a beautiful and interesting topic and timely for this moment. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
We love having you. Thank you so much. So, Geraldine, what do you think? How do you personally see this moment for humanity? Crisis, awakening, something else?
You know, this is such an important time right now. We are truly, truly going through. For those of you that are taking time to pause in silence and observe, is very obvious the shift and the change that is happening in the totality of the human race, really. And it's something that's happening at such a deep subconscious level, which is what makes it so special. We are definitely going through many shifts in the world, and we are beginning to experience the beginning of period 9, which actually begins next year is year 1 of that period 9. This is year year 9. Next year is year 1. And 9 in numerology represents completions. It represents endings. So literally this month in particular, energetically and also numerically, and you'll see a lot of different things that are happening in the news with a lot of, disclosure. We have this new space object that they're talking about that is moving in space coming around here, 3-Eye Atlas, I think they called it. And it's very interesting what is happening. But all of these things are not random. They are all signs of what is coming and what is really pushing us into a new era. And so with the start of this period 9, it's a 20-year era that we're beginning. which will be the complete dismantling of an old system that was rooted in imbalanced and inharmonious states, where it was an imbalance of the divine feminine and the masculine. So right now we are entering into an era in which the divine feminine is re-emerging, coming back into a harmonic order. And all of those suppressed, mentalities and systems that were forcing those are changing. So we're going to see, we are going to see a lot of, things happening in our world, which for the untrained eye, it's going to seem like a lot of chaos and pain and suffering. And there will be a lot of people that when we are not prepared to handle shifts and changes, through our emotional body, biochemically, bioelectrically, in a spiritual manner. This is why we've been talking so much about building resilience over the past 5 years to prepare for these kinds of changes, because precisely these dismantling of areas which we have rooted ourselves into as truth, we have made it a foundation of reality. All of that has to go, because what all the ancient teachings have been teaching for centuries is an understanding that, the nature of this reality is not as solid as matter, as material as we might think. So as we enter into the new era of the multidimensional, anyone that is rooted in that materialism is going to have a very hard time. And those that are beginning to expand themselves energetically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally into the multidimensional are going to be the ones that are able to transition through this time in a more, elegant and integrated way. So we have a lot to talk about, but I'll start there.
Amazing.
Wow.
Whew.
Yeah.
No, you go, Augie, please.
Now you mentioned that being prepared is the way to go, but what about those that are not? What do you think can happen to them? Are they going to be just going away? That's a diplomatic way to say it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Death is not the end of anything. And that's something that also is part of a maturing. We're kind of going through the teen years of the human race right now. We're maturing. And we're needing to mature very quickly. And through the maturity process is understanding certain concepts that before we were fearful of. That has to change. Death is one of them. Nothing ever dies, ever. There is really there is no death. There is the dissolving and decomposition of our physical shell, but in reality, the life force that exists within us is infinite. And we have to learn how to understand that, integrate that, because the purpose of the life of this incarnation in this dimensional realm is purely for experience. Now, you choose your experiences very carefully. The way that you choose to experience things is as a collection, it's a culmination of your ancestral lineage, your interdimensional starseed, learnings and lessons that you wish to accomplish in this lifetime. And those of you that are being aware of that, quickly, you remember that understanding, you can experience things that are on a timeline that is more, you learn the same lessons, but you learn them in a way that is more compassionate and healing for yourself, more productive. So counterproductive is illness, sickness, it's dissolving into death, essentially. Okay? So, and yet what I have learned in this process over the past, 10 years is that even death is always going to come at a timely moment that is designed specifically for the compassion of that soul. Because it might be that soul reached the level of all the lessons it needs to live. And also it might be that, it wasn't designed to continue on in the experience of the world as we see it. So to surmise all of this, it's about frequency. It's a frequency game. If we learn how to sustain our frequency in harmony with universal law, universal order, which is constant ebb and flow, constant change, constant transmutation, opening energy runways, mind and body, thoughts, emotions, in a way that life force is moving fluidly through the body, that's where we can obtain union with evolutionary cycles. And
Oh,
evolution,
I
yeah.
love to hear you say that, because in a roundabout way, it kind of sounds like you're saying that is a form of ascension.
It is, it is, it is. And it's a complex thing, because in order for you to understand that, you have to have a concept that there is life after death. You have to have an understanding of multi-dimensions. You kind of have to have an understanding and a vision into the non-visible realms, right? Because even right now, we are surrounded by millions of entities, beings, going lives and other timelines that are occurring right here in this room at the same time as I'm here. So, that kind of vision is something that is absolutely imperative to develop. And there's a process for that. The activation of our higher faculties, such as our intuition, our self-healing capacities, remote viewing capacities, telepathic communications. This is the technology of the future of the human. And we are changing. Everything is changing about the human into these capacities, and it's absolutely imperative that we do that. That's the preparation that we're being asked to do right now. Because in order to have those higher faculties requires the cultivation of a 0 point, all right? And the 0 point is the neutral, non-judgmental observer of the world, that you can see all the things falling, things happening in the world. You know how to maintain your center.
Yes.
This is how we connect to the infinite field, where we can see above all of those manipulations. Something that happens a lot when there are transitions like this, because of course this dark aspect is fighting so hard to be held on into reality, is that there's a lot of manipulation, a lot of deceit, a lot of remember, the shadow is merely the inversion of natural order. It's a that's evil. You can say what people might call as evil. There is no good and evil, but the difference, how to differentiate that, is the manipulation and distortion of order and harmonic order. That's how we kind of know the difference. And as you learn, if you align more with nature, you come into harmonic order, the easier it is for you to recognize those little differences, for you to discern how to choose your next experience in life.
Wow.
What about extraterrestrial assistance? Where do you see that fitting in, if you see that fitting in?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2013, I was taken on board a craft. I was taken by Pleiadians, and I was taken to the planet Maya in the Pleiadian constellation. And one of the most amazing things that I gathered from that experience is understanding and witnessing and experiencing very advanced civilizations. And what I learned from that is that these advanced civilizations, they follow the laws of the universe as a core foundation of the structure of their societies. And what I was shown is that, what was important for them there was the education of the mastery of these higher faculties, of the higher sciences, of spiritual sciences, which is the mastery over the non-physical realm. So when I saw the convergence of the science and spirituality in these kinds of, and it's not the only advanced civilization I had visited. I visited many different kinds. The takeaway is looking at our future, our potential future. Our potential future is that we choose that kind of timeline. And one of the key fundamentals of that is working with harmonic order, working with natural order rather than artificial order. I also have been on draconian ships. I also have been on these more parasitic, environments. And what I learned from that is that it's all about the manipulation. It's all about the withdrawing of life force from something else in a parasitic manner. And anything that distorts nature into technology in a way that is not conducive of harmonic order, you're going into the direction of transhumanism. So there are two major timelines for humanity right now. One that is in harmonic order, in alignment with natural technology, and another one that is in transhumanism. So for many years, these beings have been interacting with me, you know, and it's everyone. A lot of people are having contact experiences. Contact is not the UFOs and technologies that we see from our own governments of the world that have already created that technology. The real contact is in the interdimensional planes that we access during our dream states, during our out-of-body experiences. And that's something that is part of our higher faculty cultivation that is imperative for humanity in order for us to expand our consciousness beyond matrix conditioning. Right now, our matrix conditioning is very materialistic, and it limits our ability to see other forms of society, other forms of, you know, sustainability in our world. So what I see and what many of these higher octave species have been communicating to me through the many years of these experiences is that we want to learn to recognize natural order, and we want to seed, as this old system is dismantling, we seed technology that is being highly advanced right now, robotics, artificial intelligence, which is moving incredibly quick right now. So we have to really wake up and participate in that so that we can drive that technology towards the betterment of humanity in order to dismantle parasitic organizations and systems. Right now, we have a lot of systems that are greedy, that are focused on control, that are focused on the elimination of certain genetic markers in the human race. And there's a reason for that. And this takes us to the other topic about DNA. Our human bodies are one of the most advanced technologies that exists. And all technology mimics the organic systems that are happening inside of our body. When the human is disconnected from the body, when the human is disconnected from their own technology, we lose sight of understanding this kind of external technology and what it can do in the bigger picture. So we actually have to return back to the body, and in our DNA is encoded, every single human is a library of universes with specific frequencies, specific connections, specific genetic markers and memory that is encoded in the bioelectrical field that becomes activated whenever we return back to that reconnection. That's where we find our starseed lineages, which allow us to connect to Pleiadians or Turians, whatever beings you're connecting to. But it's not so much about the beings, but rather the frequency of information that is essential for humans to anchor in learning how to create this new society. That's what we are learning from these channeled information. So through our DNA, you know, some of these intentions are to distort the DNA, to basically damage DNA. When DNA is damaged, we cannot access higher faculties. When the body is not in harmonic order, when we're not healthy, when we're not well, we cannot access those levels. We also have a difficult time discerning. We have very little mastery over the matter. You know, so these are things that the human has to recognize and understand to choose very seriously what we're eating, what we're consuming, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Absolutely imperative in order to take back control and regain sovereignty in the direction of the human race and what we're doing right now. So let's cut short to the answer. There are many races, not just the Pleiadians. And when I say Pleiadians, by the way, you know, today's panel is specifically about the Pleiadians, but it's all about frequencies. It's all about ranges of frequencies. The Pleiadians are our ancestors, and we have descended from them, but we are also moving towards them. And I know that's a difficult concept because time is not linear; it is spherical. Okay.
Yeah.
So we exist simultaneous to them. We are them, they are us. And so as we pull from that information to create and seed this consciousness into this earth, you know, there are certain traits that Pleiadians bring. And one of them is the mastery over the arts and creativities and creation energy. But creation energy is also connected with sexual energy and money. Okay, there's a profound connection between that. The Pleiadians are our closest relative in terms of frequency. Okay, And they're not only humanoids. There are many different ranges of species that make up the Pleiadian system. Because again, it's about vibrational frequency. There's also ranges of Pleiadians. They're not all positive. There are some that are, a little bit parasitic in there, as in with every species. So the important thing about this is that what they are guiding us, and I think they do it through the channelings and connections to many humans on this planet. We are learning again what is sacred sex, what is sacred exchange energies, what is sacred creation energies. I was shown that many of the ascended masters of this earth are descendants of these Pleiadian lines, these higher octave Pleiadian lines. And the teachings that they bring to us is essentially the ability to alchemize through the heart into creation. Okay, so one of the lessons that are being taught at this time to humanity is taking these seemingly everyday activities into sacred divine arts, which they used to be back in the day. So, for example, in our DNA for healing, how do we create another human? So, the sacred art of sexual energy, for example, is something that has been hidden for many generations. And as we begin to learn again how to use this energy in a way from pure love and divine connection, it changes the bloodlines of the human race. So that's something that we are kind of learning. We talked about star seeds, and there have been many discussions about many different waves of children. Every time children are born, they come at a higher octave every time. So what we're going to be seeing in the future, in addition to this new merging of hopefully using technology in a way that can help humanity, is that we create cities and families that are rooted in a high octave of geometric science. Because when a child is created from that place of purity and love, the structure of that child geometrically and in their genetic structure becomes more complex. And that is sustaining a higher octave frequency. So the new human, the structure of energy of the new human is more complex. It's a higher octave of complexity. So this is one way that genetically we're also going to be changing as we move towards the future.
There's such a wide variety of need for understanding, need for education. Like some people are just waking up going, oh my gosh, maybe it would have been better if I stayed asleep, because they're scared now, because this is very abrupt and very, intrusive to them. So where do they start compared to people who already understand about frequency and DNA and dimensions? How does each person follow a thread to get what they need?
Yeah. I think it really comes down to understanding, and I guess it's a powerful choice that one person has to make. But the problem is that one of the laws of this universe is the law of accident. So if we fall too low underneath a certain frequency, we're going to experience things that are going to shake us up. They're going to shake us back up into an awakening, shake us back up into the awareness that we are falling in underneath that frequency. It could be anything from an accident, a car accident. It can be a illness, a sickness, whatever it is in our life, a relationship issue. These are invitations for the human to choose love rather than fear.
Yes.
And that requires a little bit of it requires love. You have to love yourself so much. And this is really, really important, but we have to love each other and be compassionate with ourselves in order to choose a compassionate life that is not rooted in fear, suffering, constant suffering, pain, illness. Rather choose, harmony and peace. And that's one of the main themes of next year, is that we are going to need to learn, what does it look like to live in peace? What does it look like to live in harmony and to choose peace because it's easy for us to, because we're conditioned. Not only are we conditioned through technology, we're psychologically hijacked biochemically to be in constant states of stress, survival, and reacting to things. You see people, once something happens, people are just spewing hate, anger, upset about the things that are happening in the world. And that's how you know that that is a psyops to manipulate our emotions. And one of the most powerful life forces, everything is energy. So you are made up of life force. If your life force is depleted in any way by an external stimulation, you're not going to make it.
Right.
You're not going to make it, because, you know, your life force, the human that knows how to control their emotions becomes conducive. We become gold. That's alchemy.
Yeah.
Right? Because the more, if you're, you know, just a piece of aluminum that just gets blown around by the winds, everything that happens, you know, the cultivation of gold through alchemy in the body is to become highly conductive bioelectrically. And that bioelectricity grows the more you cultivate the 0 point. The 0 point is the non-judgmental observer. This is where you get health, longevity, higher faculties, intuition, clear intuition, and
Yeah.
come into harmonic order. And these are things that have been taught for centuries. None of this is new. We know this. This is in the structure of our reality. So it's just a matter of finding love every time, remembering love. We forget love. And we forget love because we remove ourselves from our connection to ourselves. We're afraid to connect to ourselves and to be in our bodies. We're also afraid of emotions. As soon as we feel it, we are overwhelmed by our emotions, and then we lose control.
Yeah.
So a key element is to learn how to be okay with overwhelming emotions. Learn how to process emotions. You are not your body. You're not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the infinite life force that is within that. It's extremely important to remember that. It's such a simple thing, but it's at the foundation of your empowerment, basically.
Yes. Yes. And thank goodness, you know, there's so many people, even the forerunners who had been preparing for this time to be available to help people, you know, that there is a wide array of coaches and healers and shaman, you know, to choose from, if we just pay attention, right, to that little voice that says, call them, you know, or maybe that, you know. And it seems to me like, and it's stimulated by a lot of the chaos in the world, that people get so caught up in the judgmental and the labels and all of that, that removes them from the availability to even consider 0 point. Because if you're so caught up in that judgment loop, you know, in that I don't even know what else to call it besides a judgment loop, then you miss that subtle but very deep work that we have to do within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, it's not only that we want to connect with other healers, but everything in the world, when you become still enough to pay attention, everything is supporting you.
Yes.
Everything, it is so beautiful. Nature is speaking to you. You know, healing becomes available to you, but you just need to trust yourself. It's about self-trust, really. And that's something that has been destroyed in the majority of humanity because of this materialism, right? Because we have externalized our power. So it's really important that we regain and build self-trust. Literally, the next 6 months of this year, please focus on that. That's a very imperative message that a lot of these species have been really sharing over the years. And this information was already, you know, I received this like 10, 15 years ago. So it was known that this was coming. Many people already knew this was coming. But because it's a lot of work and it takes time, and we have to take time to rise and fall. There is no good and bad. That's something that we have to understand. There is no perfection. There's no good or bad. There is just your truth in the present moment, in the now, what is, that's all there is. That's it. And we just have to come back to that. And if
Yeah.
we can just remember the simple rules, those simple little messages, it becomes easy. We make it complicated, but it's actually very easy. It's just challenging. It's just challenging for us.
Yeah, the truth is always simple. And I know a lot of our learning comes from other thought leaders like yourself. And when we listen to their lecture or their video, we gotta stay on that video or lecture and don't start to multitasking, because there could be one little comment in that video that will change your life. And I found a couple of those in your videos, Geraldine.
Wow, that's so amazing. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So many of them. And you did mention before that, sometimes it's the car accident or the illness, or, you trip and break something, or right, it's those seemingly adverse events that are actually containing the gift. If we can just be still to hear, right, where we need to follow.
Yeah, exactly. And I also want to mention there's a misconception that, when you wake up, that's it, you're good. You're going to be in peace and harmony all the way through, and you're good, you're done. But this evolution never ends, and each soul is a universe of experiences and certain lessons that a human has to evolve through. And every experience that happens, you're peeling another layer that you need to learn. It's so amazing. I find so much gratitude when I have those kinds of wake up calls, because they allow you to really deepen your understanding of things. You may think that, I've worked with many lifetimes, many ancestral lineages, many repeated stories, but every time that I'm able to go deeper into that, my understanding of things is expanded. And that's the invitation. Don't be afraid. There is no failure. There is no good and bad again. Evolution is constant thing. It's that constant change that is necessary. So so it's a very beautiful opportunity for humanity during these next challenging years. Rather than facing them with fear or contraction or worry, come back to that love. The more you come back to love, the easier it will be for you to recognize exactly what needs to change in that moment.
I got a thought too that especially over the last year or so, people starting to talk about, even Greg Braden are talking about, that this simulation we are in appears that all the timelines are converging into one eventually, and that might be coming up very shortly. And he says that using the principles of quantum mechanics on the blackboard, it looks like the simulation may be ending. What do you think of that?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, here's the thing about that. That's an interesting concept, but here's the thing about that. Within this dimensional realm, this is a construct, right? So you see, we're kind of co-creating this construct. So in order for, if he's saying the simulation is the construct, it would mean that, well, that's a little complicated. I mean, this construct would have to dismantle completely, and then we would enter into another collective field. Because here's the thing. In reality, we're just light. We're energy. Yeah. The only way to experience things is through a construct. Because in a construct, you have creation, you have matter, you have a contrast. So sure, perhaps the model of this construct may dissolve, and what we will be emerging to is to a higher octave. The higher octave of a construct at a higher octave will be a different model of experience. That is true. That is very true. And actually, we are existing multidimensionally and simultaneously in maybe millions of constructs at the same time, each and every one of us. So when I think of it from that perspective, I completely agree that this old construct will change. But what I also see is that in the bigger picture of things, things are already in harmonic order. Okay. And I know that sounds kind of weird. It's like, what do you mean? There's people dying, there's wars, there's killings. How can we be in harmonic order? Well, we are, because in the bigger picture of things, everything is actually exactly as it needs to be, because every person gets what they need from that experience, even if it seems horrible. It's part of that. And so part of the maturing process is being able to kind of recognize that ultimately we are already in harmonic order, and there will be some people that will never leave that state of consciousness in this lifetime, and that's okay. That's part of their journey. It's part of their element. So really, until we leave this construct, which is based on the law of three, duality, duality, it's a dualistic. That is the design of this construct, to experience that duality. Now, we might leave our bodies every night into other dimensional planes where we experience other systems and other civilizations and other planets that are operating on higher laws, like I'm sharing with you. That's very necessary. We also have to do that, so that's my humble opinion on that.
I got an extra little thought on that, is that everything within this construct is energy. Energy does not go away.
Exactly, yeah.
So it has to continue in some form. But I think also I'm along with what you're saying, it is accelerated in vibration to a higher construct, which the expression of the old one changes to become the new one. Am I on to something maybe?
Absolutely. But I also want to mention, it reminds me to remind us that we are the user interface that creates the reality. Okay. So that's the thing to remember. We're not waiting for anything outside of us to change. And that's extremely important to understand, because with these concepts of the new earth, a lot of my own clients, they're thinking, oh, 5D is coming. I'm going to go to 5D. It's all going to be good. But we don't understand that requires us to really activate our higher faculties in the present moment every day and become this new earth. We are, or becoming this new human, as we say. So that's something that is a little tricky, that some people might become confused of. You create your reality, and you have to choose and discern very proactively what you're watching, what you're engaging, what you're participating, what you're commenting on, what you're thinking of. It's every moment. Your emotions are creation. Every emotion is a bioelectrical charge that is inputting into this system of creation. And that's very important. Part of your bioelectrical conductivity system, the more that you come into that 0 point, you cultivate a Merkaba. Merkaba is one of many forms which we take, but the Merkaba is a heart-centered system from the heart, that the more you expand your heart, the more you perceive the world and create mind-body coherence, which is that 0 point, everything comes into harmonic order. Your DNA expression is expressed as it should be. Your energy levels are contained. You are able to contain energetic boundaries, emotional boundaries. Really important for us to understand how that works. And from there, you become this new human. You cultivate your higher faculties. You begin to practice your intuition. You connect with higher civilizations. And there are many, we talked earlier about these kinds of events that are going to be happening. I think that when we talk about disclosure, for example, there's going to be a lot of events that will look like ET invasions, alien invasions, or there will be intimidation about connecting to these kinds of civilizations. And that is going to be something we have to pay very close attention to. It's a psyops, psychological kind of intention to make us doubt our connection to those higher faculties, but we must connect to that higher information.
Yeah. So sit back and watch the movie, right?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, Nori, you're muted.
You're muted.
I had dogs barking, sorry. Before we close, this time has gone so quickly. Where would you recommend, Geraldine, that people who can't quite find hope right now look for hope?
So here's the thing about hope. I think really hope is kind of an idea that we are hoping things, and there seems to be an externalizing element to that that I would love to redirect back to the self. And rather than looking for hope, learn to build trust in yourself.
Nice.
Because you are the creator of your reality. You can heal your illness like this. Okay. And I'm not speaking that lightly. You can change the direction of your life overnight. You can do those things. We have been programmed to believe we cannot. We have internal belief systems that limit us from doing that. So we have to reprogram all of those limiting beliefs to understand that we are powerful. We are powerful creators, manifestors, healers. And that is something that we have to anchor into our reality very seriously at this time. So every way that we possibly can harness that and embody that, that is the key to sovereignty, freedom, empowerment, and truth.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Geraldine, tell people where they can reach you, please. Mac will have your data available, but just for those of us who are sitting with pencils, just waiting to connect with you.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I look forward to connecting with you. My website's geraldineorozco.com. And you can also catch many videos on my YouTube channel, Geraldine Orozco. And it was an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much for this amazing panel. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Geraldine.
right.
Thank you, Augie.
How are you doing on the book?
Good, good. It's coming along finally. I had a couple delays there, but it's coming.
You folks,
Share.
we better be looking for that one.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will.
Yes.
Much love, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. And now we are on to the next one.
And the next speaker is LeBain. She's also a tremendous researcher. She gives us some insight on what is going on behind the curtain of where we are going. And the curtain is falling to the ground shortly, and we're going to see a lot more, and she will explain that to us, what is coming.
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is going to be so much fun and so much educational. I'm going to take the education part myself because I need it. We have the very accomplished Ella LeBain with us, and she is returning to broadcast in Malpa. We've had her on a few times, and it's been wonderful. Let me say a few words about her. I think most of you probably know her, but here goes. She is an extraterrestrial experiencer, a UFO researcher, and author of 7 books. Seven books. And also, one of them is Who's Who in the Cosmic Zoo, and the last book, The Cosmic Slingshot. And that last one is some really interesting stuff, and I do want to mention some of the things that is in it because you need to know. And also, she is from originally from New York, but she got her education in Israel. She got a social science degree from the Biological Research Center in Negev. I think I am pronouncing that possibly right. And she is schooled in Biblical Hebrew, and then got an astronomy degree. And she lived in South Africa under apartheid. And as a counselor, she realized after her close encounter with extraterrestrials that she really needed to know more about this and start studying it. And we are going to hear from her now, and we are all ears. Welcome to the show, to the round table.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to see you both again.
See you. So, Ella, from your perspective, how would you define this moment humanity is in right now?
Well, we are transitioning into a new age. It's called many things, so I'll throw all the names out so everyone can relate depending on where they come from. The golden age, the age of Aquarius, processional age of Aquarius, the millennial reign of Christ, we're overlapping. So that's very similar to the hour before the sun comes up, the dawn, how you see the light, but it's not quite there yet. That's where we're at, as an analogy.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Do you think this is a time of crisis, transition, or awakening, and why?
Well, yes, I think every crisis is an opportunity, especially to wake up. So it's happening all of the above simultaneously. And sometimes it can feel like that in a day to one person's personal experiences. So for sure. So what we have here is an astronomical event that kind of colors everything. So everything is it's the cause and effect. So the effects of that is what we're all experiencing, and that is the Nemesis Nibiru system intersecting in our solar system, which is causing perturbations on all the planets, okay, as well as particularly our sun. So our sun is acting up, as I'm sure you're well aware. Not only are we in a solar maximum cycle, but it's an unprecedented one because the sun is literally falling apart. And it's responding to the magnetism of these other bodies, celestial bodies. So we're seeing, first of all, the Nemesis system has there's 7 objects. Nibiru is only one of them. So we are seeing one of those objects already locked into orbit around our sun. Every 28 days, it eclipses our sun. And we're seeing it in the space telescopes. So people go, where, how come I? It's like, well, seeing is believing. And it's out there. I've just posted a whole montage that is on my Facebook page so anyone can see it. So you can't make this stuff up. It's, we have SOHO, which is, the solar, the helio viewer. They're studying the sun from over a dozen different space telescopes that is focused primarily on the sun. They block out the sun. So when you see it, you see this big black dot in the middle so that they can study the solar yard. And they're looking to see what's happening to the corona and outside of it. So we've known through ancient records that our sun has been seen or viewed as a stargate. So there's that layer happening as well, because not only are we seeing exoplanets show up around the sun and moons, spherical celestial bodies that are, one of them is the size of Jupiter. Okay. So not only are we seeing that, but we're also seeing craft. We're seeing spaceships. Okay. What MUFON has termed as technological signatures. So, they've studied what's happening around the sun and they're seeing, okay, well, this is a comet, this is an asteroid, these are solar flares, this is a coronal mass ejection. That's a techno signature. Or this is an exoplanet. So a lot of people haven't come all fully on board with this yet, because it's like, the cognitive dissonance to this is pretty thick. But as we're moving into this transition, more and more people are starting to see it themselves, and we're seeing photos and videos from all over the planet from the position of the Earth, not space, where people are actually seeing twin sunsets, 2 suns setting at the same time. That is not the moon. It's another object that is with the sun. And we're also seeing it during sunrise. And it can be seen like about an hour before sunrise and depending on latitude, around the time of sunset. So it moves. So every day is different. And like I said, this one planet, which is the size of Jupiter, it's orbiting our sun every 28 days. And so during that big solar eclipse, the total solar eclipse that happened last April of 24, everybody was focused on the sun. Everybody had their cameras looking up, and as well as the space telescope. So what was caught in the LASCO coronagraph space telescope was not just the total eclipse of the sun by our moon, but another object. And this is pinned to the top of my Facebook page. So if anyone wants to see it, you're welcome. It's free. So what we're seeing is you see the moon go over the sun, and it's going in one direction. And then a couple of minutes later, you see another object coming from the opposite direction, moving in the opposite direction, partially eclipsing the sun. So that's not the moon. The moon doesn't do a reverse backwards boogie. It goes in one direction, and this is going in another counterclockwise. So we're not alone. Okay, there's something around the sun, which is affecting almost everything. Our climate change, the earth is shifting, the poles are shifting, the magnetic poles as well as the physical poles, because, even the Inuits who are up in Alaska, and they depend on the location of the stars and the sun for their survival. They have said 10 years ago that they've seen a shift, okay, because the sun is not where it used to be, the stars are not where it used to be. So the evidence is overwhelming, okay, that this is happening. So as a result of these solar flares that we're getting, that are creating these coronal mass ejections, literally pieces of the sun are just falling off. Like the sun is like falling apart. Okay. So the earth, unfortunately, we have had multiple cracks in our magnetosphere, and our magnetosphere is our protective bubble. So every time there's a solar flare and a CME, coronal mass ejection, that is Earth facing, because fortunately we don't get hit with every single one because they're not all facing the Earth, like the Earth gets at. But the past few days we've been having an Earth facing one. So what happens is that it waves over the Earth, and the holes and the cracks in the magnetosphere let it in. And then it starts creating all kinds of climate changes, warming in areas where there really shouldn't be, excessive heat, flooding, all kinds of problems come from this. And people are seeing auroras, which they have always called northern lights, in the south. So we can't really call them northern lights anymore. So that's a big shift.
Absolutely. Yeah. But when we talk about all of these things, it doesn't matter what government says. You can actually see it, especially the people that take pictures of it. In the early morning, if you get up and look at the sun coming up through colored glass so you don't hurt your eyes, you can see through sun, so you can take pictures of it. It is there. There's no question about it. But what are the repercussions for us from it? Could this, because of the extra gravitational forces, could that turn into some form of an extinction event for us?
Yes. Well, so what and the government people of the planet, not just the US government, all over the place, they're aware of this. They've been aware of this for a long time. I would go back to under the administration of President Ronald Reagan, because that's when the proof, the evidence was handed to him from the IRIS probe. So the IRIS probe went all the way out to the edges of our solar system, took a picture of Nibiru, and gave it to President Reagan. And it was in 1982 that he met with, the trio, Maggie Thatcher and Gorbachev, and they all sort of, discussed their next steps. So there's been plans in place for a very long time, not only to cover this up, because they thought, well, if we let this out, it would create panic, and they needed to maintain status quo. Pretty much the same reasons for the UFO cover-up, okay, which it is connected. And I'll connect that dot for you in a minute. But so they decided on all these different, policies and things in place, which, is history to us now. We're living it. And so they're aware of this. And they knew that this was coming. Not only did they see it in proof, but it's been written down by the ancients, written in stone, written inside the temple walls, written in the scriptures, and written in the Bible. So the biblical end time prophecy is something that a lot of Christians get mixed up. So we're going through an eclipse period. Eclipses are normal. They happen like clockwork. Every 6 months, there's solar and lunar eclipses. Nothing unusual. They're a big deal, but they're not extraordinary. Okay, they're normal. Click on the dials. And every time a full blood moon eclipse happens, the Christians misinterpret Joel 2:31 that this is the end times. So we are living in the end times, but it's not the end of the end yet. Okay. So I need to address what Joel 2:31 is, because that is the extinction event. Okay, is that it says that the sun will go dark like sackcloth, and the moon will turn red like blood. So of course they think blood moon, it must be it's not, first of all, it's celestial dynamics, okay, make it impossible for a solar and a lunar eclipse to happen simultaneously. So we can scratch that off the list of it's not one of those things. What it is an atmospheric storm that the Earth actually orbits right into, okay, that comes from the debris tail of the passing of this huge planet Nibiru, which is not going to hit the Earth, okay, but the debris tail is going to get in between the Earth, the sun, and the moon. And the debris tail is full of red iron oxide. Okay, so the red iron oxide is toxic. And this dovetails and explains the end time revelation biblical prophecy of wormwood, because the word wormwood means bitterness. And it says that, and wormwood is not like a new name, because we have herbs that is called wormwood. There's bitter herbs and stuff. So the reason why they named it wormwood is because the red iron oxide, there's an asteroid that comes out of this system. This is a parade of horribles, you can call it, but a parade of all kinds of objects that is in this debris tail. So we've got asteroids, comets, fireballs, meteorites, and yes, spaceships. Okay, there's probes, there's interstellar objects, which we're awaiting 3I Atlas to pass the Earth. And that's why it's named 3, because it's the third one of its kind. So this is all part of the parade that precedes the passing of Nibiru. And so the red iron oxide gets in the way, creates an atmospheric storm, causes the sun to go dark and the moon to look like it's blood red at the same time as Earth is moving through this. Okay, so it is a passage. All right. And at that time, a lot of people who have studied this believe that marks the extinction event temporarily. Okay. It's another world that is going to get established. And that's the other part of that's the positive, hopeful part of the prophecy. So it's like a cleansing. And what has happened in the past, it's not our first rodeo, because stuff like this has happened before. And when the sun goes dark for 3 days, it can create a mini ice age. Okay, because then everything goes into a whole like total climate change. And then the final push is this great earthquake. Okay, so lately we've been seeing eights, okay, magnitude 8 earthquakes, which is very intense.
Yeah.
What is predicted is nines and even a close to a 10. But the prophecy, the end time prophecy in Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, chapter 24, talks about when the earth literally turns upside down, which is a biblical vernacular for pole shift. Okay, and we're already seeing that our magnetic poles have shifted from the Canadian Arctic to the Siberia, which
Yeah.
it shifted continents, and that's about 45 degrees. So we're measuring, we're watching this, we're seeing this, and that also explains the climate changes all around the planet, and melting of ice in like Antarctica, and even and the volcanic eruptions. That's another layer of this, and we're seeing more sleeping volcanoes, active volcanoes, all active right now. I mean,
Yeah.
on a given day, there's like a dozen of them. So this is unprecedented. This is signs of what's to come. And so what happens afterwards is the arrival, okay, of Yeshua and the hosts of heaven, okay, where it says that the whole world, or whoever's left on it, will see him coming in the sky with like thousands and thousands of horses of heaven. Now we know horses don't fly, right?
Yeah.
But this is also biblical vernacular for spaceships with tremendous horsepower, space chariots. And this is how it was described when it was written down in the past. And when that happens, okay, the presence of him and all of heaven's angels lift the earth up. The very presence of their arrival causes the ascension, the literal ascension of the earth, to come out of this darkened extinction event state into heaven on earth. Okay, so that's where a lot of these prophecies, predictions, channeling, and you're familiar with a lot of them, that talks about the earth moving into the fifth dimension. They made a song about that in the 1950s.
Yeah.
And that's like a real thing. And how it happens is the very presence of the heaven, really, the armies of heaven coming and establishing the kingdom of heaven on the earth. And as a result of that, the earth is lifted into the fifth dimension, the realms of heaven, and that is the true ascension. And then, as if that's not good enough, all of the people, okay, that are marked for the age to come, all right, because death is not the end of things, right? So just because everybody physically, the shell dies, doesn't mean the soul dies. So if your soul is marked for the age to come, then you're restored. So what happens is all the curses, we're under a lot of curses, biblical, way back from Genesis. The fall of humankind, in my opinion, wasn't just the curses, it was genetic downgrading, where we were created in the image and likeness of the gods. We had 12 strands of DNA operating. We've had it all. And here's what's real interesting. I'll connect this dot for you to resolve this cycle, is that the last time we've had an age of Aquarius on this planet was approximately 24,000 years ago, during the times of Atlantis and Lemuria. And that's when human beings walked with all 12 strands of DNA, and we had it all. Okay, we had all the clairvoyant abilities, clairsentient, clairaudient. We were able to create with our consciousness, and things went downhill. There was there was error, there was mistakes, and then everybody got cursed down into these bodies. Okay, so the true ascension is the deliverance, the liberation, the breaking of all these curses, and the restoration of humankind from 2 to 12 strands of DNA, from living about 90 years to living 1,000 years again. Because in the beginning of the Bible, everybody lived to be 900 and change, right? Then the floods of Noah came, and nobody, most people don't live past their 80s and their 90s. The telomeres go up to 120. Something happened. That was a genetic downgrade. So when the armies of heaven and the King of heaven and Yeshua comes and lifts the earth up, he's also breaking all the curses and restoring humankind to what our original blueprint was. And that is the 12 strands and living 1,000. And that's why it's called the millennial reign, because it's 1,000 years. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that was amazing.
Yeah,
That was
and
fabulous.
we know that there was a genetic interference because chromosome number 2 was taken and bent over and inserted back in. It cannot happen. So that's what blocks all of it. So yes, you're exactly right.
Yes, I agree with you there. So that's really the ascension, but here's the thing. We cannot do it by ourselves. Okay, we need help. We didn't get to this point by ourselves, and we're going to get out of it with the intervention of the King of Heaven and all of his entourage, his angels, his armies, and those are the good ETs. And Yeshua is extraterrestrial by every definition of the word, okay? Because he even said so, out of his own mouth, okay? I am not of this world. That by very definition is extraterrestrial. My kingdom is not of this world. Again, another extraterrestrial statement. So what we need here at this time is the ability, what we're being tested and what we're being invited to strengthen in ourselves like a muscle, except it's not a physical muscle. It's more of a spiritual and a soul muscle. And that is discernment. Because as we get closer to the end, the deception gets thicker. Okay, because there are forces and beings on this planet that are in rebellion to this event. They do not want to see the return of Christ and all of the extraterrestrials that belong to the kingdom of heaven. They're in rebellion, kind of stuck inside this planet, the moon, Mars, scattered around our solar system, and they've been here for eons. And one of the biggest secrets, because the end times represents disclosure. I mean, the very name of the book of Revelation comes out of the Greek apocalypse, which literally means disclosure in Revelation. Okay, so UFO disclosure, people have to be careful what they wish for because they're going to get it, and it may not be what they expect. Okay, and so it's a multi-layered thing. So one of the things that's been covered up that our people have known for a long time, that they've been gaslit and suppressed, and that is from the 1950s, the late 40s and the early 50s, the early contactees, the early ET experiencers witnessed craft and beings coming out of the planet, this planet, coming out of the oceans, coming out of mountains, coming out of holes in the ground. And what happened after that was the Great Gaslight. Okay, where the government said, wait a second, we have to keep this secret because we're working with them underground. They're creating a secret space program to be able to defend themselves against the alien threat that they have been told is coming, or they can see. So we can't let people think that this is all happening here inside the earth. We have to get the consciousness to go outward. So they used Hollywood to create movies, B movies, about aliens, visitors from outer space, people from Mars, the war, all the stuff that was the 50s and the 60s even. Okay, because it was a way to divert attention away from what's really happening here. But you know what they say, how things come full circle, and here we are again. So Antarctica happens to be one of the most protected places on Earth, and the peace treaty of 1859 that involved almost a dozen different nations, including America, to protect the hole in Antarctica that people have seen from space. I mean, everybody thinks, oh, Admiral Byrd, yes, Admiral Byrd, Operation High Jump, all of that. But there were people that the Nazis were there before, and even before the Nazis got there, the Russians were there and knew about it in the 1800s. Okay, so there's all these back stories, okay, that are now going to come, because let me just reiterate that one of the quintessential end time prophecies says, whatever has been concealed will be revealed. Okay, so everything that has been covered up is going to come out. All right, and one of the other prophecies also about end times are creatures coming from inside the earth, coming out of the earth, coming out of the oceans. Okay, and this is what people are seeing. Like craft coming and going in and out of oceans, out of mountains. So we know that this is a real phenomenon. And in terms of people who advocate for full disclosure, my thing is that we deserve to know who our neighbors are, who is in our neighborhood, and the civilizations, the cities that are coexisting with us right now inside this planet have been here for millennia. Okay, their technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours, which is one of the reasons for protecting the hole in Antarctica, because they know that, and they know that there's so back in the 40s, okay, that's where people were at. They were coming out of World War II. Then there was the Cold War, which was all about, a lot of it was about this. Even though the surface said, oh, they were fighting communism, but really underneath it was all about alien tech, who had what, who could do what. And of course, it was always focused around Antarctica. So I think that as the planet shifts, as the ice melts, and they were already seeing, even back in the day of Admiral Byrd, he saw in the middle of the ice, in the middle of Antarctica, was this huge swath of green, lush, grassy land where he said he saw what looked like a woolly mammoth, grazing. Okay, so how come? Why aren't we? How come we haven't been introduced to that? How come it's like been hidden from us? So a lot of it has to do with these peace treaties and the agreements that our governments have made with the inner earth civilization, the ETs that live inside the earth, the aliens that live inside. So we say alien is something that is non-human, but these are humans. Okay, these are intraterrestrial, not extraterrestrial, intraterrestrial humans from another time that are coexisting with us, who may have even escaped from the floods of Atlantis, because when the floods happened, a lot of ancients would go into the earth to hide, to survive from what was happening on the surface, from the extinction events. And the earth is caverned out. So when you think of hollow, everyone immediately thinks of like a hollow egg. It's really, that's not accurate. It's more caverned out.
I think though that the chances are there may be a few calamities here and there, but to what extent do you think our friends in space will be able to protect us?
Well, I think we have friends in inner space.
Maybe
Okay.
both places, huh?
Yes, because they're underground in other planets like Mars and the moons of Europa, which is like the size of Earth. Like, I'm sorry, Jupiter. Europa is one of the moons. There's life on Europa. There's oceans there. So, and here's a piece that I stumbled upon years ago. And I don't really know who told me this, but that I don't remember, but one of the things that I was told was most planets are inhabited from within, because the planet is considered almost like they call spaceship Earth, like and what Earth has that a lot of other planets don't is this protective magnetosphere, this bubble that we've enjoyed that is now starting to break down. So that's where the ascension comes in, because it needs to be restored and repaired or created a new one. All right. But most planets don't have what we have. So when beings inhabit planets, they go inside, because the planet itself creates a shield and a protective, like craft in a way, a home abode for the deleterious effects of space, gamma rays. So like, for instance, Venus, people think in their natural minds, how could any body come from Venus or live in Venus or live on Venus, because it's 900 degrees Fahrenheit? Who can get in and out of the sun? But yet we've been told things that have sort of colored our understanding to create kind of a misunderstanding, because really the opposite is true. So the beings who come from Venus come from inside Venus. And so this is, you had asked me when we talked originally about the Pleiadians, and this is seems to be a discernment that I have stumbled upon since the 90s, where people think that the Venusians are the Pleiadians and the Pleiadians are the Venusians, because we have contact. Val Thor, who allegedly said he was from Venus, who worked with our government, who hung out in our Pentagon for a long time. You know the story. And how did he get from here to there? Okay. So nobody saw him arrive in a spacecraft. He just showed up. So here's another piece. And this explains things, okay, is that there are portals, right? Space portals on the planet, all around the planet, there's portals that open and close every day. In fact, in 2003, NASA announced that. It's out there. You can look it up. It's in articles that they saw that there are portals opening and closing 24/7 on the Earth. So whether those portals are all focused on other dimensions, or getting into space, or going from Earth to Venus, or going from one location on Earth to another location on Earth, which the Bible describes, okay, which I proved in my second book, in certain ancient biblical stories, like Elijah, like, oh, he ran really, 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 really fast to get to Jezreel, and he made it before Ahab had to go through the mud storm and the thunderstorm, and he shows up dry as a bone. What was that about? He went through a portal. Okay, same thing with Yeshua and Jesus. He knew exactly which portals to move in and out of. How did he end up in India? How did he end up in Nashville? How did he end up in France? I know this sounds crazy to people.
Oh, it's
all in the Bible.
Yeah.
It's all written in the Bible.
Yeah.
So not only are there portals that take us from one location of our planet to another, there's portals that go in and out of space, there's portals that go into other dimensions, and there's portals that connect our planets. That's how Val Thor, in my opinion, went from Venus to Earth, and nobody saw him. And he's come and gone a few times, right? So So, and when they see these beings come out of the earth, like Billy Meyer, all right, who, he's a famous Swiss farmer who saw,
Yeah.
he said, were the Pleiadians or the Pleasurons, or, and how do you know that they really were from the Pleiades? Maybe they were from the inner earth.
Good
Okay.
point.
And the fact that, and I connected this dot in my second book because they said their name. Okay. They told him that the blonde woman, her name was Semyaze. Well,
Yeah.
that coincidentally, if there is such a thing, it was the same name as the leader of the fallen angels in the book of Enoch. So how do we know that that is not, and that just because somebody says, hi, I'm from the Pleiades, doesn't mean that they are.
Right.
Okay. Maybe that's a cover. Maybe they're really from the inner earth.
You never know because
But-
they, yeah.
I'm sorry. No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Robbie. I'm sorry.
No, no.
You-
you-
All right. Could humanities and beyond, different perspectives, different beliefs, different, arguments that they're having in their heads about what's going on. No, that's not real, and that's not real, and this is real. Do you think that different narratives may affect what we manifest collectively?
I'm sure there's an influence, an effect, a cause and effect in that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if we just deleted stuff, we'd be in a much better situation, like violence and hatred and all the toxic characteristics of humanity.
Yes.
If that all got deleted, erased,
Yeah.
right, we'd be in a whole different situation.
Yes.
But the fact is, that's not our reality. We live in a duality at the moment. That doesn't mean that's how it's going to be forever, because that's not what the prophecies tell us. And I know, look, I'm a Messianic Jew. I mean, and Jews are familiar with persecution, religious persecution, Christian persecution. So in no way, shape, or form am I promoting a religion. Okay.
Yeah.
However, you have to eat the meat and throw away the bones. And
Yeah.
that's a step in discernment. Okay. And that is that there is a difference, a vast difference between following a religious construct and having a living, intimate, daily relationship with a living God, okay, or a spirit, okay, or his spirit, or however you want to talk about it, right? So yes, I think that plays a role in the influence of us and even the narrative. And because the narrative is jumbled up with religious spirits and religious wars and persecution and anti this and anti that, that is definitely bringing us down. So that level of consciousness is not like healthy. We have to come out of that somehow. And sometimes purge. Death is the great purge, because death is not the end of us. And
No.
this is what my recent book, The Cosmic Slingshot.
I can't wait to read this.
That's basically what that talks about, is that we've been kind of locked into, like, bound in these cycles of reincarnation. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the fall of humankind and the curses on the planet caused a dark force, to the archons, to take over and sort of use it for their own purposes, which is one of the reasons why the genetic downgrading happened from living to be 1,000 to living to be like 90. Okay. And that was to speed up the harvesting of human souls and human energy. And that's what the cycles of reincarnation have served them. However, on the positive side, on the God, the divine side, God has used it, okay, as a means for correction, for soul correction, and to weed out those who are in rebellion and those who are children of God because he made our souls, okay? And there are soulless beings. I have things divided or distinguished to discern between the clash of the two kingdoms on earth, and how there's soulless beings, and then there's beings that are soul matrixed like us, okay? And the
Yeah.
soulless beings are parasitic to the soul matrix beings because they're using us to feed off of. They siphon, they use our energies, they drain us from time to time. The alien implantation happens during abductions for that very reason.
Yeah.
And the cycles of reincarnation are prophesied to end. Okay, so people can say, oh, I have to work harder, I have to do this better, and that's not really the answer. The answer is that no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, you're still stuck in this prison planet, which is, those words came out of the Gnostic Gospels.
Yeah,
Okay,
it did.
and that's why Yeshua said, I have come to set the captives free. So who are the captives? That's all of us. Okay,
Yes,
so our freedom, our liberation, our deliverance translates to our ascension.
Yeah, and I see now we're getting right down towards the end here. But please let people know where they can get a hold of you. You can find your books, especially that last one, The Cosmic Slingshot. You get an awful lot of good stuff there.
Thank you very much, Augie. I'm at who's who in the cosmiczoo.com, and all my books are worldwide on Amazon, Kindle, audio, and paperback.
Awesome. Ella, I have a question, one question before we go. If you could give humanity one tip or instruction or reminder at this crossroads, what would it be?
Nurture your soul and look to the creator of your soul and connect.
I love that.
Connect with the creator of your soul and you'll be all right.
Thanks, Ella. Thanks, Augie. Ella, thank you so much for being with us. And we're going to have you back on to broadcast email for our regular programming, because I really want to talk about your book. And thank you for doing our roundtable. And you are brilliant and amazing. And I'm so grateful for you. And Augie, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless.
The last speaker is Father Francis Tiso. Yeah, he's from Italy. He's a Catholic priest, and he was commissioned to go to India and Tibet, and I believe also to Bhutan, where he discovered the evidence for that people actually are ascending and taking the physical body with them. Think of that. If they did it, we can do it, because we are all the same human. All we need is to know how and practice. So listen really close to him, because this is going to get good.
And hi there again. Now we have the next speaker, and you're going to love this. This is going to be a consciousness raising experience for you to listen to. We have Father Francis Tiso with us. He is in the hills of Italy as we speak right now, and he has been he's a world traveler, and I've studied a lot more than the Christian religion. He is a priest of the Diocese of Isernia, Venafro. I think I got the Italian accent on that, don't I?
Well, yes.
Okay. And he was born, though, in Mount Vernon, New York. So he is actually an exported American. And there's a difference. He is a doctorate in Buddhist studies, of Columbia, and he studied many other things inside and outside of the box. He's got a Master's of Divinity from Harvard, well educated. And he's also a liaison to other religions for the Catholic Church. But more so, what we're going to talk about here is that he went to India and Nepal and maybe other countries in the Far East because his spiritual father told him there's some research that needs to be done. And hey, you're the man to do it. So he kind of encouraged him to go there and find the evidence of the rumors that yes, people actually can ascend. And in some cases, I've seen the pictures that he has where the physical body or most of it goes with them. That is kind of a far-fetched, but yes, there is evidence for this, and I would love to hear him talk about the ascension process and the rainbow body and what he found in India and Nepal and some of these countries. Well, hey, welcome here to the show.
It's great to be back, Age, and be able to share some of these experiences and thoughts. Our research always comes from inside of us. There is always a subjective and first-person aspect to all of this, our own spiritual quest that drives the research that we do. But then the research that we do is also supposed to be at the service of others. And so that's what we can do, I think, in our conversation tonight.
Yeah. And that must have been a phenomenal experience. How long did it take you by the time you took off on this journey to the point where you actually had some real evidence that, yes, there is more to it than the physical body?
Okay, well, this is quite a story. I recommend that our listeners read the book Rainbow Body and Resurrection, which tells about this adventure and gives the actual texts of the interviews that I did with 4 or 5 eyewitnesses. All right, so let me kind of sketch this out. Back in 1998, a Buddhist monk named Khenpo Ache was 82 years old, and he passed away. Immediately upon his last breath, in the presence of his disciples who were with him at the time, his face began to change. But already for several days before his last breath, there were mysterious rainbows in the sky over his hermitage, rainbows that were of different shapes. Okay, well, so when they saw his skin changing, they knew that something was going to happen. So they put his body in the little square-shaped bed where he used to meditate and sleep, and they covered it with his monastic robes. And they did all the prayers that you're supposed to say at that time. And they consulted with his spiritual brother down the road named Lama Achuk. And Lama Achuk said, okay, wait a week, all right, and continue saying the prayers. And then on the 8th day, you can remove the cloak. But he said, don't look under the cloak until then. And so they did exactly what they were told. And there were many phenomena. There were perfumes. There was mysterious music. There was a mysterious rainfall. There was a cloud in the sky of explosive light, gigantic cloud that was seen over 100 kilometers away. So these various phenomena occurred, and they noticed that under the cloth, the body was shrinking. Now, all of this is known. It's not the first time this has ever happened. So they were not completely surprised, but of course they were deeply moved. In fact, they were so moved that they said, we were so occupied with what was going on that we didn't even think of taking photographs or anything like that, unfortunately. But anyway, at the end of the 8th day, it was time for some special rituals in honor of Padmasambhava on that day. And so they removed the cloth and they saw that there was nothing there. Nothing. There was there were no stains. There were no hairs. They said that maybe there were 3 hairs that had fallen off previously, but everything was gone. Everything was gone, and so they were absolutely flabbergasted, because usually there's a shrunken body, or if there's going to be something, the body might shrink down to 10 or 20 or 30 centimeters high, or there might be hair and nails, but here there was nothing. And so it was a complete dissolution of the body. All right. So the following year, the news about this reached Switzerland, where there was a doctor from that part of Tibet. This is called Nyadong County. And this doctor was working in a psychiatric hospital in Zurich. And he was a friend of a Zen teacher in Switzerland named Vanja Palmers, who I understand is still alive and still doing that kind of stuff. And Vanja is a close friend of Brother David Steindl-Rast, who was my spiritual teacher. So Vanja told Brother David, and Brother David said, "Oh, we should send Francis to try to interview the people who were there for this experience." So Vanja provided some funding, and we did a preliminary trip in 1999. All right, to see what was going on and see how to get places and see if I could connect with people who could take me there. All right. So I did all that. And then in the year 2000, I organized a very long trip that started in May. All right. And so we went from, at the time I was living in California, I was serving a parish in California. I came to Italy with a group of parishioners. We did a pilgrimage, and then I sent them all home. We had a 15-day wonderful experience. And then after that, I took off for Nepal. And in Nepal, we went with a small team up into Dolpo, which is a very remote area, the northern border of Nepal, to do research on the scroll paintings, the tankas, that are kept in the temples there. And so with my little team, we went up there. And what was good about this is that by staying there for a couple of weeks and doing this project, we got acclimatized to the altitude, because we were over 4,200 meters. All right. It also gave us a lot of physical strength, climbing, getting up there and all of that. So then after that project, because you need to prepare yourself.
Now,
So
4,000 meters, that's 12,000 feet. So that's quite up there.
yeah, that's right. So, and I had been there before. I'd been there in 1997. So the people of the village knew me, and they called me the Jesus Lama. So, the Jesus Lama has come back. And they were very happy, and we all cooperated with this project. Then after that, I flew to Chengdu, which is the capital of Sichuan province in southern China, famous for its amazing cuisine. And there I had a connection who was going to take us to the place where the Kenpo lived. But my translator had found another driver, and there were some obligations to be met. So he convinced me to use this other driver. Okay, whatever. But we had to find out where we were going and how we were going to get there and what we were going to do. So I had a little team with me. I speak a little Tibetan. My translator scholar speaks better Tibetan than I do. And then we had a couple of other people along. So finally, with this other driver, who turned out to be a rather reluctant driver, he didn't like the idea of going out into the hills of Tibet, all the way far away from Sichuan. But anyway, he did it. But we also met people who helped us, who were friends of the Kenpo. All right. And so, for example, when we got to the city of Kanze, all right, we met with several of the Rinpoches from the main monastery. We met with the nuns in their monastery. We met with the chaplain of the nuns, who was a close friend of the Kenpos. And we were guided by these people. And in fact, there were many dramatic moments in which we really didn't know where we were going, what door to knock on, but we were guided. We really felt that we were guided. Within the first hours of the first morning in the city of Kanza, not knowing really even where to go, I just went to the first gateway of the monastery that I could find, and waiting there was a young Kampa layman who said, "We've been waiting for you. Come with me." So, so we go, and he took us to the two elderly monks who knew the whole story, who had the text of the biography, everything, falling into place, one thing after another, as if it was all scripted. It was really kind of amazing. And we actually got to the hermitage out in the hills, and were able to do prostrations and prayers and interview people right in the spot where all this took place. And then we also visited his Dharma brother, Lama Achung. And Lama Achung was a very impressive individual. And he showed us two photographs. And if our audience, if they know the Nyingma website on Rainbow Body, all right, on that website, there's a little lotus flower, pink illuminated lotus flower, and there's a picture inside that lotus flower. And the picture shows the Kenpo in the dark, radiating light. Okay, it's a little hard to see, but when you know what you're looking for, then you can make it out. Well, I actually held that photo in my hand, but there's another photo, which is not on the site, in which his body in the dark had divided into three. All right, and there were rays of light coming from all three. All right,
Right.
so this is pretty amazing. And he did assure us that upon his death, he would manifest the rainbow body. So what happened in 2000, I think it was 2008, he died, and his body shrunk down to a very, very small relic, right, that has been preserved. So, this is pretty amazing. But that's not the only instance of this. Now, in recent years, there have been several other cases of people who, after death, shrank their bodies down to very, very small, like a small relic. And there have been some photos circulating about these people. So there's more and more evidence piling up that this is a reality. So my first step was, let's try to think about this like by being part of this community, participant observer. Let's be open-minded. Let's bracket all of our scientific concerns, and let's listen to what the people are actually saying. Right. So each one told the story, how they experienced it. They're all doing their first-person narratives, and we're engaging them in conversation in a respectful and devoted way. All right. And that worked because people were opening up. And they could see that this whole research thing was guided spiritually, that it had a spiritual slant to it. So then comes, all right, what do I do next? Now, I did interview in 2003 the great Bonpo leader, Lopon Tenzin Namdak, also known as Yangzin Rinpoche, who just passed away on the 12th of June this year. And he explained in 10 days, he gave us instructions on how the rainbow body is attained in the Dzogchen system, the Great Perfection system. And he explained dark retreat, he explained the Trekchö level, the Togal level, and he gave a lot of very, very important point-by-point instructions about this. So we had a great opportunity with him. And then I also interviewed other people, other lamas, but then I fell into this gigantic perplexity. How am I going to write about this? All right, because we've done this as participant observers. All right, but that wasn't really enough, and I had many other things on my mind that I was bringing into this conversation. Brother David, of course, was interested in comparing the rainbow body with the resurrection of Jesus, which is already a pretty challenging topic. All right. But then I began to read, in fact, I had already been reading the writings of the monks from Syria, actually, Syriac-speaking Christian monks in the Middle East and also Central Asia. And these Syriac-speaking Christians actually arrived in China. They may have arrived in Tibet, may even have gotten as far as Japan or Korea. They certainly were also in South India, the same great, huge Christian church that the Western Christians hardly know anything about, but which was at one time probably the largest Christian church in the world, both for population and for extent. It's also very interesting that this community was outside the Byzantine Empire and did not have a government, an empire backing it. They were just there on their own merit, right? And their own persuasion. So what they achieved with a remarkable degree of freedom and great courage. And they translated many of the Greek teachings into the Syriac language, which is a form of Aramaic. And then they eventually got to China, where they integrated with the Chinese population and began to create monasteries and churches, even in China. So that's a whole interesting story. And I began to see that the experiences that these Christians report in their writings look a lot like some of the same experiences of our Dzogchen Buddhists in Tibet. All right, like the sphere of light, heat inside your body. They describe dark retreat. They describe different colors. They describe crystal imagery and this kind of thing. So many of these things are commonplaces in the Dzogchen world. So, now I really begin to think there's a narrative here. There's a possibility here that we have a real story that has walked both ways back and forth across Asia. And in fact, the story of the founder, the original human founder of Dzogchen, is the story of a man named Garab Dorje. But Garab Dorje seems to have been born in a territory far to the west of Tibet, in what is now south of the Aral Sea, the region known as Khwarezmia. Okay. Khwarezmia is a very interesting area. It's maybe the homeland of many of the tribes that eventually went west into Europe. And it has a kind of quality of being on the very periphery of the world of Persian and Indian civilization. So here's Garab Dorje born there. Now, but the story of his life, it's all decorated with Indian Buddhist imagery, But if you get down to the quick, it sounds like, of all things, the 19th surah of the Quran. All right. So there's a Muslim story in there too. All right. So you have a Buddhist story, but you also have a Muslim story of Mary, who is the mother of Isu, of Jesus, right? And she goes into retreat. She becomes pregnant miraculously. She is ashamed of her pregnancy. She doesn't know what to do. There's a lot of perplexity and conflict, but eventually she realizes that the child that she has born is a miraculous child. All right, so there are many interesting things that turn up in the Garab Dorje story that are in the Quran and that are somewhat different from the New Testament story of Jesus and Mary. Okay, but then there are things in the Garab Dorje story that are not in the Quran, but are in the Christian legend. So here we've got Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism coming together in the same narrative, a foundational narrative for Dzogchen. This really got
Well,
so maybe Brother David was onto something, you see?
yeah. I wonder, you mentioned in the beginning of your talk there that when you met somebody and said, "Oh, Jesus is back," but I gotta recite something that the Dalai Lama said when he was asked, "Is there any evidence of Jesus or Isa or Yahshua being in India or in Nepal or in that area?" And the Dalai Lama said, "Oh yeah, we have some documents showing there was a couple of Hebrew young people that came here right about the time when he could have been here. Have you heard, or did you
Well,
run
you may
into
have said
any?
that. I know that it's become a very hot item in India. And of
Yeah,
course, in Kashmir, they show a tomb that is supposed to be the tomb of Jesus. Unfortunately, that tomb did not exist before
yeah.
the 18th century. And in fact, it's all based on a beautiful devotional poem by a Sufi master who invented this legend, okay, which has now become, for some people, history.
Yeah.
There's no historical, reliable evidence that Jesus uh, ever went beyond the boundaries of what we now call Syria, Palestine, Israel, Egypt. Of course, he was in Egypt. In that region, right there at the western side of the Fertile Crescent. All right. Um, there's no evidence at all of this. What's interesting and what gets us past that particular uh, legendary narrative is the fact that there really were Christians in the Middle East, all right, and in China and Central Asia. And we know about them, and we have documents from the
Mhm.
very dry areas in Central Asia, like Dunhuang and Turfan, that tell us that these Christians were in close contact with Buddhists, Zoroastrians, Manichees, and Taoists. All right. So, for example, um,
But
all
then,
right. Do you know what Mo is? Mo in Tibet? Mo is a Tibetan divination system. All
oh,
right,
okay,
something
yeah.
like I Ching, and what you do is you toss the rosary in the air and you count the number of beads between your hands. Okay. All right. So, like that. And then you look up the number. You do it 3 times and you look up the number in a list of outcomes. Okay. And so then it tells you whether that's going to be a good outcome and what deity or what practice or what tradition it's connected with. Okay. So at Dunhuang, which is a cave, a set of caves in northwestern China that were sealed up around the year 1020 AD and were opened up around 1912. All right. They found thousands and thousands of documents, but there's one Tibetan document which consists of 114 responses to a Mo divination. Okay, it's a little a kind of booklet that tells you what's going to come up when you
Yeah.
throw the mala in the air. So the 12th item on that list says something like this. There are three great protectors of humanity, and one is called Jesus the Messiah, one is called Shakyamuni Buddha, and the other is called Vajrapani. And Isu the Messiah was ascended into the seventh heaven and sits at the right hand of God. And he is a friend of mankind and all of this. And then it goes on and it says at the end, the outcome will be very good. Oh, it also says that he lives in the West. All right. So this Isu Messiah is right there in a Tibetan text in Dunhuang with quotations from the Creed. All right, it's a Christian. It's clearly a Christian reference, somehow accepted by a Buddhist scribe. All right. Then on the Christian side, there was a Christian author who wrote a beautiful parable in which Jesus explains to Saint Peter in classical Chinese the meaning of the key Buddhist terms.
Oh,
All right. It's absolutely amazing. And this has been translated now in English. And my friend Matteo Nicolini Zani published a book on this document and other documents that have been found. So it's pretty amazing. That's when Christianity came in contact with China, Tibet, Central Asia, India, and so on.
yeah. I
So
mean, I
yeah,
wonder though, when the Christianity was in China and the Eastern there at that time, who brought it there? Like,
to what?
who may have brought it there? That's a good question. Could it
Well, they
be?
did. I mean, the Syriac Christians did. They went
Oh,
there.
okay, okay.
There's actually a black stone monument that was found in 1623 that describes in detail exactly how this happened. And the author of that monument is the author of that story about Jesus and Peter. Okay.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
the Japanese scholars have studied a lot about this guy. His name was Jing, and he was friends with a Buddhist monk named Prajna, who came from what is now Afghanistan.
Mhm.
So they both spoke Aramaic, right? But Prajna had also studied Indian languages. He brought many scriptures to China, and with the help of his friend Jing, he learned Chinese so he could translate these Sanskrit
Okay.
Pali texts. It's an
Yeah,
amazing story. And
that's
Prajna is the guru of Kobodaishi, the founder of the Shingon sect in Japan. So there's all these amazing connections that were taking place.
yeah.
This is around the year 780, around the
That's an
780.
that's an amazing history.
Uh,
Let's think a little bit about the future also. It
mm,
appears to me like there's a global phenomena that is happening and by the raising of consciousness of people to a higher level of spiritual understanding.
mm.
And I think most people can feel it or see it. And then what do you, there are people now saying that there are energies that is coming through the earth where we are that is helping us raise this consciousness. Do you have any thoughts of maybe why it is happening now and not 200 years ago or still waiting?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I one of the things that really got me going and enabled me to write that book, which was not easy, all right,
Yeah.
was the feeling that somehow in the 8th century something happened like what you're describing. There was an amazing awakening of consciousness and people coming together from different countries and working together very seriously on translating and understanding extremely deep texts, all right, and having profound mystical experiences, all right. Now, in the 9th century, the Chinese emperor decided that that was enough of that, and
Ah,
persecuted the Buddhists and other religions, and there was a kind of Chinese revival at that time. So that put an end to things for a while, almost completely. But in our time, it seems that yes, the discovery of nature as a feature of this earth, all right, the feature of this earth that when human beings encounter nature as it is and not as we would like to manipulate it, our intuitive abilities awaken. And, even people who talk about psychedelics or entheogens, basically what are they saying? That something from the earth, when ingested by human beings, awakens human beings to the beauty and the extraordinary qualities of this planet and its ecosystem. Right? And
mhm.
that is exactly the crisis of our time, the ecosystem of this world. So it's as if the ecosystem is telling us, you'd better watch out because what you're doing to this ecosystem is diminishing you, is
Yeah.
diminishing your humanity. See, so the message is a compassionate one of revise your approach. And now I'm hearing from many young scientists, philosophers in different parts of the world, thanks to our Mind and Life Institute in America and Mind and Life in Europe. We're hearing from young people who are telling us my scientific research is inspired by, is motivated by just this very thing. And many people are telling me about mystical experiences that are quite extraordinary. And almost every day, I get emails from people who, have had unusual experiences. They are professional people. They are trained in all of the official disciplines, and yet something is awakening in them. So we're seeing a time right now when the exchange of ideas is particularly lively and intense, And the fact that the sciences are getting more and more involved with this, I think is very exciting.
Yeah. And I think over the last 20 years or so, I can see evidence of this because there are people that I could have talked to them 20 years ago about spiritual information, and all they would do was laugh at me. Now I talk to the same people, and they are listening to my shows, Broadcast Team Alpha on YouTube. They're there, and I run into them on the street, and they say, "I love what you guys talked about," and I think scientists also now are starting to study quantum mechanics. Maybe quantum mechanics is opening up the door to an explanation of spiritual reality. That's what at least Norilov and I will, on the co-host of Broadcast Team Alpha, I think that's our impression also. What do you think on that
Yeah,
avenue of science?
for many people, quantum mechanics and the various explanations for the inexplicable phenomena of the micro world of the extremely small particles and energy at the base of what we know of the atom. That has opened up a lot of discussion, particularly because of the interaction or entanglement of consciousness and phenomena that are observable. Okay, so I don't know if you know this book. I have a couple of here. Um,
I like your
there-
library back there.
yeah. Here's Evan Thompson's Mind in Life, in which he tries to show how life and the emergence of the mind, consciousness, are an entangled phenomenon. That they're inactive, one with the other. Okay, and then you probably know the blind spot. This has been read now by many people, in which why science cannot ignore human experience. Okay, and these two approaches, enactivism, that's designed by Francisco Varela back in the 1970s, and then Evan Thompson's contribution and his other colleagues, really waking up the scientific community to its need to adapt a new paradigm for the work that it does. The service that science can do for the world, right, has to come from a new way of doing science and a new way of looking at the scientist as the observer involved in the experiment. All right. I mean, sort of a very generic way of talking, but it's precisely because of the discoveries of quantum mechanics that people have become more and more propelled to look at the need for a new way to do science.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the concept I kind of prove is real is about 100 years old, the double slit experiment.
Right.
And it proves that we kind of, I'm going to make that claim for myself, we live in a mind-created universe. The mind has something to do with everything that we see and create around us. I really want to comment on this.
Yeah, it's everything interacts. The idea of interdependence is so important here, that causes and conditions cause phenomena to arise, and there's this continuous flux of cause and effect and of inaction. Now, take for example what Varela was trying to say. He was saying basically you have cells, right? So you can talk about microorganisms. A microorganism is not just a membrane containing protoplasm and a nucleus that can reproduce itself. It's also actively engaged in a relationship with its environment. And the environment impinges on the cell, and the cell impacts the environment. As we know, there would be no oxygen in the atmosphere if it were not for the emergence of algae who make oxygen with chlorophyll. All right.
Yeah.
And there are many, many other examples, probably millions of them, that show how organisms shape the environment. But they shape the environment because the environment is also interacting with them.
Yeah.
Right. There's this constant back and forth. All right. So in biology, it's really, really evident. But going back to mind and the universe, I'm a very, I won't say I'm a simple-minded person, but I try to communicate in ways that anyone could understand, I hope. Think about it this way. We always talk about the laws of physics, right? The laws of physics, and we study them and we do math about them and all of that. But nobody asks the question, how can you have laws without consciousness? Apart from the question of whether there's a God, there has to be some source for these laws, all right, because they're consistent, because they actually work, and because they actually also provoke in the human mind a desire to know more and to think more critically, which is kind of interesting also.
Yeah.
That
Isn't,
research makes people want to think, all right? There's something about our place in the universe
yeah, isn't
that,
that what we call the universal laws?
sure,
Yeah.
there are the universal constants, there are universal laws like entropy and gravitation, the four forces, all of those things. So that had to come from consciousness because consciousness, they don't arise on their own. They must arise from a substrate, all right, a substrate that is conscious, all right, and can transmit a projection forward. That's why some people, we were talking about this a minute ago, the idea of this universe is a simulation. Well, you could
Oh,
say
yeah.
that that's one way to put it. That's shall we say, a disconcerting way to put it, all right, which some people like to do. But you could also say simply that consciousness is prior to the laws of physics. The laws of physics operate on matter, energy, and the four forces. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you get the universe. All right. So, and if we want to say that consciousness also is grounded in the divine, I would be happy to do that because I'm a theist. But not everyone is a theist. But at least you can talk about the priority of consciousness.
Yeah.
All right. And people like Michel Bitball, the great French neuroscientist and philosopher, he will say just that.
I'm wondering though, isn't there maybe two forms of laws of physics? We have the physical laws of physics. Like Newton was a really brilliant man, but he didn't understand the other side of the coin because there is where the spiritual laws of physics exist. Do you see the two of them actually
Well,
working with?
actually, Newton was a very spiritual man, and as you probably know, he was also
Yeah,
almost certainly an alchemist. All right. The problem with Newtonian physics is not that it's wrong, it's that it doesn't go far down enough
yeah,
in the world of matter and energy. And that's what in the 19th century, when they began experimenting with electromagnetic energy fields and so on, they began to realize that Newtonian physics didn't describe everything.
yeah,
All right. So the search for a science that could describe the phenomena that were being observed, thanks to better and better equipment, right, is what caused those paradigm shifts, right, from Newtonian physics into uh, first electronics and electromagnetism, and finally, inevitably, into the quantum mechanics theories, of which there are several, of course.
yeah.
So, and this is where we are today. But what's exciting about all of this is it really does rope in human experience, human consciousness as a sort of inactive, co-inactive participant in the whole process of the universe itself. See,
Yeah, yeah.
that
And
that really gets
then
us going.
I hear physicists are getting together and they're saying if we take all the information, the equations out of our existence, use the principles of quantum mechanics and put them on the blackboard, and we run it all down until the last equation, we find that there is a 93% chance that we are living in a simulation. What is your last comment on? Now, this is quantum mechanics now. That's almost like spiritual science. What do you think?
Okay, well, I think for one thing, quantum mechanics, people who do quantum mechanics already know that this is uh, an attempt using language and mathematics to describe things that are very, very hard even to imagine. Okay, so the human mind is reaching out and trying to formulate mathematics and language metaphorically to describe extremely subtle phenomena that cannot be directly observed. Okay, so there's that. Now, the whole idea that the universe is a quote simulation implies somehow that there's a simulator.
Yeah,
Okay, so this just sound like a sci-fi way of talking about consciousness generating a universe. I sometimes I've pointed out perhaps a now forgotten book by Frank Tipler called The Physics of Immortality, who says almost the exact opposite end of the conversation. He says the whole universe has to become a simulation in order to survive. All right. So he says that all the minds that are present in the universe on Earth and perhaps on other planets all have to come together, work together, and create the simulation that will allow the universe to survive its ultimate collapse, either into the big crunch or the big fizzle. All right, but one way or another, the universe is going to come to an end. But we could overcome either of those by becoming together a
yeah.
cooperative simulation.
Yeah. Gosh, we're coming down towards the end here. You've been talking about other books here, but talk a little bit about your book also. If you have one, then maybe show it to us and then tell us where people can go and get more information about the evidence of ascension in your book.
Yes. Well, of course, I think there's been a lot on the web. There are those nuns in Tibet who are doing very intensive practice. There's a lot of information now about dark retreat. There's a lot of information about visionary experiences, thanks to both the near-death experience research and to experiments with dark retreat and to experiments with light. And that's where I would like to leave you with the amazing research that's been going on about biophotons, which help us understand the role of light in the life of the cell. And the fact that in dark retreat, you see ever increasing patterns of light, increasingly precise patterns of light, suggesting that in dark retreat, the human mind is encountering its own biochemistry and beginning to gain mastery over that biochemistry, allowing us to dissolve our bodies if we wish to at the time of death, or do other things too that are compassionate and wise, in the world. And there are many different ways of doing it. Through intercessory prayer, through interventions, through subtle influences for the better in our world. I stopped the whole conversation the other day in at this conference in Austria by saying the science that we'd like to see happen is a science at the service of everyone. Okay.
Yeah,
Boing. At the service of everyone. And certainly, if we learned more about how our cells work and how close we are to light and consciousness, we
yeah,
would see an immediate coming together of spirituality and science.
yeah. More about that ascension and all those issues on Amazon, is it?
Yeah, of course, in the case of ascension, which is one way of putting this, the idea is that even after death, a highly realized person, first of all, can manifest signs that teach us that spirituality is real. Okay,
Yeah,
number one. And number two, can further intervene in universal ways, in wonderful ways, to help humanity. And
Yeah.
we experienced this in our research project, where in only 8 days, we were able to do everything that I had planned to do in 10 or 12 days, right? Because there was this energy flowing through those days, guiding us along.
Yeah.
Just a little example.
Yeah, there you go. Well, this has been fun, and there's so much to learn out there. It is our responsibility to seek out people and publications where we can learn more. And that is what I want to encourage people to do. If you are not growing, you are retracting. There is no such thing as standing still.
Absolutely.
So keep growing, keep learning, and have a look at that book, because we all talk about ascension, but where do we find the evidence? Well, there it is. Go look at it. So I thank you very much for being with us, and then we're on to the next speaker.